This next story has been suppressed by mainstream media. Let's go to Andreas for more.
Everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Hello. Welcome to the Exators. Tune in for another exciting episode of wonder, imagination, and discovery.
Recent Tartarians.
Она образует всеобщие закономерности, определяющие законы классической физики для нашего
Sometimes I
мира.
look at the moon and just think, the skin's beautiful.
Baby, when I met you, there was peace unknown.
Что касается энергии наномер, то она превышает ядерную в немыслимое число раз в 10 в 74 степени.
That's it. That's it. That's it. With your arms now. That's it. That's it.
Thank you for watching Exators. Keep listening. Remember, if you enjoyed the video, please follow and subscribe and share and support. It really helps. Coming up next, Exators.
By the way, that's gone. If you didn't record that, that's gone forever. It's gone.
Yeah. Okay, what's up, bro? How's it going? Good to see you.
Yeah, doing good. How are you?
I was just testing everybody to see if they were ready for that. Okay, are you ready for that? Look at this cool chair. Like, what's up, bro? Like, how many chairs have you ever seen that have that kind of decorative? It's like 1993. You know what I mean? Everybody thinks the 80s.
That's
but
probably
the 80s
accurate.
weren't. The 80s were not nearly as cool as 1993. I think it's a completely it's an understated like 1993, 1995, like pretty much. You know what I mean? What thumbnail's wild? What's the thumbnail again? I don't even remember what the thumbnail
It's a beach
is.
towel, by the way.
Oh, that's based. I love the towel. It's a cool towel, bro. It looks legit. Everybody, this is Neuropa. I don't know what time it is. Is it late there? Right? It's late. Yeah. It's like 12:07 here, noon. So that's 3 p.m. 1500 hours in New York, and then I guess it's like 10 p.m. 22.
9 p.m. 9 p.m.
9
now.
p.m. in Austria. All right. That's pretty cool. And we've got this list of itinerary, Neuropa 16th, October 2024, where we will talk about old world issues. Earth shape has a whole section, the new world, and health. I think that's pretty much the vibe for the show today. Yeah. But really quickly, Raph, what have you been up to? What was your week all about? What have you been...
Playing around with voice cloning, maybe similar. It's different to what you're doing. You're doing songs. I was doing translations, both German and English. And I have to say, I'm quite, let's say, accepting of the current situation regarding voice cloning. So I used Nova AI. There's also something called Rask, which may be a bit better, but is like about 10 times more expensive. And what it actually does, even with Nova AI, does voice cloning, and it's pretty decent. Very soon we'll actually have a shorter segment of David's voice cloned into German, and it's quite hilarious. And even before I was voice cloning someone from German to English, we may actually look at the video a little bit later, and it's kind of funny what accents they then choose depending on what English or German accent someone has, like what type of foreign language accent it is then translated into, like, kind of. So either it sounds like Irish or David, you will like this. Maybe I'm making this up, but he actually sounds a bit like an East German or something like this. You'll check it out more, and then we'll see.
Interesting.
But it's very interesting. Very fun.
Wow. That's cool. I think also, I wonder about that because you would want to have a character that represents yourself. Like, so for instance, in Japan, if you don't have a city accent, then it's very clear in certain respects that your accent means that you're from the country. But Japan's a very small place, and Americans might not interpret that. So when they do like a Funimation dub, they'll give a Southern accent, to somebody who's not from the city, right? And like maybe a British accent or some sort of Atlantic accent to somebody from the city. So I wonder, like, what would your interpretation be of a person to get across that they are this kind of person, right? Like he's an Oxfordian or he's a, what do you call it? A Cockney, you know, like the difference between class or something in a different country. Can you guys recommend me things to spend Audible credit on? Hold on. What is that?
Oh wait, so you're not talking about voice AI or something like this? Because I was thinking of that now. I can tell you, but that's something else.
But
You're
they have
asking
Audible.
for
Yeah.
You're asking for like this online podcast or teaching things or whatever, something like this, which everybody's
Right.
promoting, Audible.
I would say The Pillars of Earth by Ken Follett is pretty good. The Mapmaker's Wife by Robert Whitaker is pretty good. Byzantium by Judith Herron. Albert Schweitzer and the Modern Theology.
Oh, Albert Schweitzer, yeah. Modern Christianity in an okay take.
What's fun to listen to? Obviously, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is fun to listen to.
I don't know how good the English translations are, but Thus Spoke Zarathustra by Nietzsche.
Yeah. Actually, there are pretty good.
German is good.
There is a good English translation on Audible. Sideways Stories from Wayside School by Louis Zacher, I would recommend just randomly. I think that one's pretty good. The Folklore of Discworld from Terry Pratchett as he was going insane and dying is really important. The Brothers Karamazov is pretty good. Oops, sorry. Turned one of them on. The Master and the Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov, right?
Oh, and did you know who made the official cover for The Master and the Margarita?
Whom?
Is the first one you're thinking of. Who is it? Tell me.
I can't even guess. What? I don't even know.
Professor Anatoly Fomenko. Because, by the way, he's not only like a grandmaster mathematician, he's also an artist and a painter, apparently. I only learned that recently. This may be one of the videos coming up where he's mentioning this, actually.
Really? He did the art for The Master and the Margarita?
Yeah, I'm also like, how connected is all of this? Yeah, and not just the cover, I think even like pictures, like actual 20, 30 pictures or something.
Wild. That is the craziest connection. That's crazy. That's out of control. Master and the Margarita was a book that a friend gave me before he passed away. And I was very, very interested in figuring out like why it was so important to them, and then looking into why it was so important to Mikhail Bulgakov, right? Because he was arrested for it. It was destroyed. He had to rewrite it in a gulag over like decades on butcher paper, right? I think that's kind of. I would say that's a pretty important book, you know? I don't know. If you're going to use an Audible token, you know, I guess.
Yeah, well, and basically this is also the book that's referenced by the internal predictor of the USSR and this document we had brought up about the biblical wheeler dealers, basically where some Russian intellectuals seem to be foreseeing an emerging conflict between, let's say, Western biblical obfuscators and the Quranic caliphate, for lack of a better term.
There's also good audiobooks. Like, I don't know if you have like YouTube without spam or like, but if you can listen to YouTube without spam, the Jungle Book is on, like, there's a lot of ones that are on YouTube, you know what I mean? And so like Jungle Book is really good too. Like if you don't have Audible, like it's not just like an Audible plug or something, but you can definitely get audiobooks many a way. But if that was what you're looking for and you have tokens to spend, which I get, like, I think those are some pretty good options. And otherwise, if you go in looking for free ones, yeah, look for like ones like Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book. Sounds really good to listen to that guy, like kind of a British Indian accent.
Oh, well, and if we only talk about nice voices and stuff to listen to, many years ago, I actually listened to, I think he only voiced a few seasons. But there is like really good voiceover of like season 1, 2, and I'm gonna say season. I think book 1, 2, and 3 or something of the Game of Thrones. It's by one of these super famous like British or English actors who's quite old at that time. But what's so amazing about him is his range of impersonating different voices. Because of course in Game of Thrones you have hundreds of characters, and it's really impressive to listen to this guy even just applying all of these different accents and so on. It's quite amazing.
Also on that note, if you've got, I think one of your best bets even is the Sandman by Neil Gaiman, which I have the comic books. So I actually reread the comic books while listening to the audiobook, because the audiobook is like a stage performance. Someone brought up The Hobbit, and there's also the Lord of the Rings, and any of the BBC recordings are really cool to listen to, these like theatrical audio dramatizations, right? Like we've talked to Phil Lawler about Adventures in Odyssey. I like that kind of
if you get $1 million to
soundscape.
spend on production quality, that is something you should do with it, right? It's
But
gotta
like if
spend
you
the military propaganda budget.
you can like hear people cutting your hair and walking through grass. I think it's pretty cool when they do all that. It's like more interesting than a 3D movie actually is a soundscape that they do. And for the Sandman, they have multiple people doing all of the voices of the entire graphic novel, which is, you know, a very profound and deep graphic novel. It's the deepest and most profound, I think, graphic novel that's ever been written is The Sandman. We can talk about Internet Archives, and we'll get to that in a second, actually. That's kind of a...
We can or we can't, because I recently wanted to check it out and just saw temporarily offline, and I was like, oh, well, I hope that means temporarily, and if not, there's going to be a reemergence of some
like way to make the whole, like, I know it's supposed to be like Palestinian protesting, which is just like, I don't know if this is just like 1984 propaganda, but like way to make the whole world Zionist by like taking away the archive, right? Like that's like, okay, just, I mean, if Sharia is to destroy the archive, then who's going to want that? Let's be real. So hopefully that's just a big ploy, and they're just destroying it because this is the easiest way to hide corporate takeover. Like the corporations who are super upset. Like what's been on archive.org? All the movies that don't want to put on their streaming services you're paying for. You know what I mean? Like they won't, you pay for freaking HBO Max or whatever and Disney, and they don't release their catalog on it, which is, I mean, I paid for it maybe as a VHS or something like that, and I want to see it again. This is crazy. Like, we can't live in a world where we don't have a library that shows media.
Show up with my 90s receipts for some cassettes or 2000 receipts for DVDs and be like, put it in, you know?
Yeah, I mean, at very least to see a copy of a VHS quality, like VHS is very low quality compared to like a Blu-ray rip of a film, and maybe that's different and you can discuss that. But if they're not releasing it whatsoever in a way that you can see, then what, you know what I mean? So how do you argue that in court? And obviously they can't, and this is the best possible thing that could ever happen to them. So it's almost implausible that it's just a natural occurrence. But gosh, what a lucky coincidence at very least, right? And yeah, now because of that, you can blame somebody.
What's the official reason for it?
The official reason is like the Palestinian Liberation Army. What is it?
Come on.
Yeah, it's like it's literally a George Orwell propaganda rag. Let me just. I am building proof of the archive. Archive Palestine. Pro-Palestinian group leaves message to users. Internet Archive, confirmed Wednesday, breach. Pro-Palestinian hacktivist called
I'm sure it's a Palestinian activist. Sure. Mm-hmm.
It's like of all, well, I mean, just what? Like of all things, wouldn't you hack something that sucks? You know what I mean? Like if you're trying to hack something evil, you hack like Google, Microsoft, like I don't know, some big company that everyone sees every day, like YouTube.
You know, evil, or let's leave any value judgments aside, but assuming there is a real, let's say, political ideology or whatever, or cultural ideology or statist ideology within whatever Palestine would be, I am quite certain you would find quite a lot more critical videos about this on archive.org. I mean, critical, showing different viewpoints, which you probably would have a much harder time to find on any other platform. So also, I guess, although I don't know statistics, from a political point of view, it would make no sense at all.
I mean, yeah,
it's like I'm Bill Clinton and I take down CNN or whatever, you know, like.
No, that's what I mean, like, because CNN would make more sense. Like again, like this is such a.
It's like they're taking off something that would help them. That would probably help them or document.
Unless they're like Al Qaeda, but even if they're Al Qaeda, which I don't think you would compare necessarily, Al Qaeda would be more prone to be upset about, right, like YouTube than the archive. Like, is the archive really the problem because it shows ephemeral tutorials of Chrysler commercials from 1973? Like, what is the thing that offends you on archive.org, because it's way worse out there on the official channels, like Alien Romulus, where they put things on your face that suck your soul out and make babies come out of your stomach. is a Disney movie, you know? So I don't get it. Like, what is the deal where we would pretend that this archive.org thing has anything that's even comparable to what's the official, like you would attack the official channels. You would even be better off attacking a YouTube channel that has many views than you would be attacking archive.org. So it just, to me, seems kind of ridiculous. Unless you're trying to say, okay, well, archive.org has a lot of people's data because people have to have kind of like library cards, you know, 'cause they say now, oh, well, we have this, but you can't all see it. We'll let you check it out. You can virtually check out this book and look at it, right? And then you can give it back, because they're just these crazy laws, right? That are trying to keep you from actually giving someone a copy of a book that someone else has now got a lawyer to protect the corporation that bought the rights of this book that's probably 200, 400 years old. It's crazy, right? What they're trying to do with content. I don't know, it just makes me upset.
Yes, but also I guess it's pretty clear because on the main platforms they can fully copyright strike and monetize everything according to their standards, and also ensure that there will be no type of content or information that in any way, political shape or form, I want to say any Alphabet agency or the company or holding company called Alphabet would not approve of. So I guess, you know, they want to control the whole, all the letters and the whole dictionary.
It's just really common, though, to use fake fingerprints, right? It's like an Elvis fingerprints in that movie Gone in 60 Seconds, where he has fake fingerprints on. Not only is he not like erased his own fingerprints, he's wearing Elvis's fingerprints. So when somebody gets around to looking at and getting all the prints, they do find prints, but they're of Elvis, sort of as like a FU to the forensics people, right? So I feel like when you do hacking and you hack, you pretend to be a group. You're like, okay, well, I'm so anonymous that I'm not even going to use my own techniques to hack. I'm going to use the techniques that are commonly used by this group. That way, when people say, oh my God, it was like Tuscan Raiders that destroyed the ship, you know what I mean? Like, it was clearly,
I mean,
right?
If this group really exists independently of media coverage, then shouldn't they have some sort of web presence somewhere where they would announce or denounce that they actually participated in this? And if they do, still would have to verify whether it's an alphabet soup or whether it's an actual organic group, which at this point, obviously, I highly doubt.
I mean, the other thing is the Wayback Machine. So it's just...
Yeah, aren't they related?
Yeah, so archive.org isn't just storing your books and your favorite movies, but it's storing the whole internet. Like, people keep talking about like the internet itself, right? Like, the internet archives include pages of websites. You know, like, I was just using it like 6 days, like 4 or 5 days before this, to look at pages that have been erased or whatever from 1996, right? So this is crazy to lose the library of the entire modern history, because all history really exists, I think, in the last 20 years, and anything before that is become prehistory. That's where we're at, right? And so this is like the entire record of everything that's happened, because most of their stuff is not saved and printed. It's all digital. And so just to be able to verify or corroborate anything is now, this is too practical.
I think it's pretty clear. One thing is copyright and monetization, and the other aspect is simply controlling the narrative, obviously.
Yeah, I think
So
this is way
covering
more
up the tracks.
clearly about narrative control than it is about Islam. It just
Because
seems so
now
ridiculous.
you can, okay, they say it's about Islam. Well, that's great. Okay, yeah.
Or
yeah,
like
because
about,
now,
or even about statism, to pretend that it's about anti-Zionism, like really, because to say you're pro-Palestine is to say you're anti-Zionist. So they're trying to make it this anti-Semitic thing that the archive.org is taken down. But it's in a current situation where a bunch of people are sympathizing with Palestine. So you can paint them as this reckless enemy that's destroying things, which seems to be the modus operandi. It's on par with every time there's ever been, oh, they destroyed this giant temple, they destroyed this giant statue of Siddhartha. It must have been these crazy authoritarian, financed by the United States terrorists, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, it was publicly ISIS which interestingly enough, took down this huge Buddha statue in Afghanistan. Wait, what is it, Afghanistan or Iraq? So either, one of those groups. But it was so interesting because you could see do you call it rebar, like the steel bars, coming out of it, which then of course raises the question if that statue really is hundreds or thousands of years old.
Exactly. So anyway, sorry about that. That was just a thought. We're going to go to Gleb's new video for a second. Let me open up a few of these so I can tab through them real fast. I like to do that. Let's do these ones. Start with Gleb's new video on relationships between science and religion, which is interesting because the Slavs are all about this. You probably have seen a Zeitgeist video or two that kind of, esoteric agendas with Ben Stewart, that kind of vibe about how most modern religions are talking about astrology, astronomy, the zodiac, like the movement of the seasons, etc., right? And also empirical parasites that are destroying your ability to actually see what's really going on. But yeah, what was this? What do you want to say about it?
Again, I see a pattern emerging. Maybe you're still on the wrong screen. I'm not sure. Or you're switching now.
Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah.
I was like moving it around. That's too bad. It hit this great face.
So I believe this short video by Nosovsky I haven't actually seen yet, but it's one of the newer ones. The second one I can talk more about, and that's also the one where I believe the one where they show that Anatoly Fomenko made the pictures for Master and the Margarita. I think it's the next one.
I feel like I don't give I don't give the Orthodoxy enough credit, or I give them too much flack. I'm not sure which it is.
That's actually a good point where you stopped. Old Believers, yeah.
However, Old Believers, exactly. I've always been a bit more respectful of Old Believers because we have them in Santa Cruz. This was a major place for Old Believers, and so there's like a cathedral or a chapel, like in a community there, right? So clearly they've been oppressed, and there's something that goes back way further than the tradition that people, are familiar with.
I mean, what's your guess, aside from any, mathematics and so on, how either divinely or culturally inspired would you say Fomenko and Nosovsky actually were when they said, okay, we're gonna start this huge endeavor? You know what I mean?
Like a 6, probably, at least. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
because they do a good job of kind of keeping it out of it and only talk about it personally and focus on the mathematics and history, which is great, of course. But yeah, here they talk about this guy's books, who apparently wrote books about the Olympic Games. I didn't research them. He wrote those. Igor Igorevich. And then they talk about Fomenko's work for Master and the Margarita and the pictures he made, which we looked at earlier.
That's crazy.
And also this guy does these kind of images, which are supposed to be like, I don't know, n-dimensional images or something, or high-dimensional images put on 2D. So the left guy is a pretty interesting, I guess, artist and author. And here you have Professor Anatoly Fomenko, the originator of the new chronology.
How the heck is this like? This is too.
Yeah, how is this not in the museums, in Europe?
I just remember loving this book.
Everything from Russia is banned.
I
mean, this is not in the book. I think first they show the 4D images, or however you call them, of the left-hand guy. And then I think later they show Fomenko's pictures, if I'm correct. So they basically share this love of mathematics, dimensions, and art, I guess, between them.
Wow.
Yeah, Master and the Margarita, yeah. I mean, isn't that amazing?
What a crazy, crazy world. That's just, I mean, to do so many things, to be a mathematician, a chronologist, an artist.
He put the black cat on the cover, maybe that's the black cat that's glitching the Matrix, even in the movie,
I mean, to be that closely related to the Master and the Margarita in Russia, of all, I mean, this book got, again, Bulgakov was put in a concentration camp, essentially, a gulag for this book. So he's associating himself with something pretty wild. I don't know. I wonder so much about that. And especially because it's such a spiritual book. The book, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, because maybe now you're like, okay, I might actually read that book. I don't know if that's what you were thinking. But if you're going to read Master and the Margarita, you have to think of it like the new Soviet man, and the Soviet man's mentality that he's better and adjusted and doesn't have superstitions anymore. And he's, an atheist and in control of his destiny. And they're talking to each other like a laborer and another laborer. And all of a sudden, and there's this there's this dude there who's just kind of like amused by it, you know, because he's like immortal and clearly, you know, he clearly has way more control over his destiny and theirs and the train and everything else. And it's just kind of funny to him that they think that they control their lives, right? I think that's enough. Which would, of course, that definitely upset the government. I can see why, because they were pro-atheism, and he basically was saying that there's maybe something slightly more. Just because religion lied to you doesn't mean the state won't, and etc. You know.
I mean, there's the huge thing where I believe David Ewing Jr. mentioned that there were quite many actually still baptisms during the communist era to kind of like maybe prepare for Christian resurgence or whatever. And also they talk about that even about this particular book, there was some kind of conspiracy when they properly released it. And the first edition actually did not have Fomenko's pictures, even though they already had been submitted and maybe had already won the competition or whatever it was. But the later editions then got his illustrations. But it's kind of strange and funny that even Fomenko regularly, whether it's about the history thing or this aspect, talks about, you know, the different forces and who they've been communicating with. And because many often then ask, oh, are they sponsored by the state? And at least according to their statements, it pretty much seems like even still during communism, they had some kind of a meeting with a regulatory committee or whatever. And they basically told them, yeah, it's okay, kind of, you can continue, but they didn't like support them in any way, shape or form, from what I understand, officially at least. But they kind of let them be. But at the same time also, I don't know if this is true, I heard that many, many millions of books have been sold by this point. So maybe they, you know, got remunerated in a different fashion by now and were not dependent on government funds, except for their maybe salaried position at the university, which shall be excused, especially if this is the value they actually bring to the conversation, which I would say is a far cry from what most other professors are able to deliver.
Right. Okay. I mean, Russia did rebuild investment, essentially. I don't know. We'll get into that another time. This is California resetting. Jedediah Smith. You can see what this is going to lead into, but this is all about how they reset California. Did some found building in some pretty cool places. What do you got to say about this one?
No, just Michelle Gibson always, I think, makes great videos. This is something that may interest many, even just because I guess many people listening either live in California or have been to California. Even I've been to California. I can't, let's say,
not real.
Yeah, summarize is too much. All it made me think of is that even one very old building I lived in, or supposedly old, this looks exactly like in Vienna, this type of corner building. That's crazy. But even these kind of old buildings, they were officially built in like, 1910s, 1920s. So that already was after the Great Fires and so on.
Yeah.
So even today, if you would look at things in San Francisco and think they're old, well, they may only be the most recent thing of the last reset, what they built. So, but this is really interesting. I'll look it up and then I'll show you. There is exactly this type of, let's say, corner type building.
Yeah.
Very similar in Vienna. It's funny.
Yeah, that fire sure did a number on this place. And there was a plague, right? There's the Chinese plague. That's pretty bad. In the Chinatown district.
Yeah, and I think what this actually relates to, why I pulled it up, is the next thing, which is this Bank of America. Because supposedly the Bank of America, I think this is also San Francisco related, it's in the next tab, was originally called the Bank of Italy here, here. And I'd only even heard this and I was like, wow, great. That's also one of those things.
They didn't like it. They were upset when World War, was it II? I forget. October 17th, by the way. Happy anniversary tomorrow. Bank of Italy was during the fascist period of Mussolini, they're like, we better not call ourselves the Bank of Italy anymore. Like, that's probably a bad idea. And they weren't really necessarily associated with Mussolini anyway. They were a Sicilian and an Italian. This is the thing also. I find the word mafia to be offensive. It's not really the correct way to describe generational investment. It's just something that white Protestants would describe anybody else who was trying to do business and create order and stability, they'd be like, oh, this group is like the Chinese mafia. This group is the Russian mob. This group are a bunch of drunk Irishmen.
And we are the government.
Yeah, we're like order. These are terrorists. Like, we're the state. They're not. We're the legitimate source of violence. So yeah, the Italians are definitely done dirty. And the Italians is a broad term, right? Because that includes Croatians. Essentially, at that time, a lot of people spoke Romance languages, and it would have been even into Eastern Europe, a bunch of places where, the wasps. What do you want me to say? I don't know what you want me to say.
What's again the proper? It's white American. It's not socialist, but what do you call it? The WASP term. It's a particular term.
I don't know. Every time I say it, I feel rude. White American, Saxon, Protestant. Is that what it is? Or...
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but I like psychopath better anyway. So that's what I try to say. So what was I doing? There was a point. Oh, I wanted to show you something. Bank of America swastika. Again, I don't know if this is legal to show in your country, but the logo for Bank of America is a swastika.
It's for educational purposes, so yes.
Yeah, this is what. Bank of America. Oh, there it is. Okay. So you probably don't even notice this very often, but if you give it a shot, you'll see it, right? Check out like, so the old Bank of America symbols and the Commerce Bank of Grayson, all these commercial banks.
Come on.
But like today, this is what it's like right now. Now, it's not quite exactly a perfect, like, oh, you'll get in trouble for it swastika. But if you think about Mussolini, the Bank of Italy, and the fact that Bank of America's logo looks like this, and when you go through their door, it's never red, white, and blue. It's a white one, right? So like, it's the American flag white, which is surrender, but also, the Vatican and connected to the Vatican Bank. So Italy, Vatican Bank, and
also, as we learned with the last heraldry presentation with Martin Hipp, white may actually indicate high-level sovereignty.
Right.
So,
because of the Vatican Bank.
I mean, Vatican. Of course. I mean, he said it. I just wanted to make it explicit.
So kind of based. Oh yeah, did I do Anglo-Saxon Protestant? Didn't we do that right? White Anglo? Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I thought if I said something wrong. Anyway, Gott hat kein Raubtier
erschaffen, yes. So this is kind of funny because I stumbled across this because also with the, internet and American drama with rappers and whatnot, it's quite funny because quite a few German rappers, which I guess more like alternative, small scale, they started all these Twitch channels and they're like kind of fun to watch because quite a few of them understandably have some sort of Eastern roots, like, for lack of a better term, I'm going to say Turkish now, but whatever it is. And they speak in this type of German and they are, rappers, whatever. They usually have like this 2 or 3 I've been watching, have like a good attitude. And then what they do, I guess, when not having so many shows, they just stream on Twitch, right? And comment on things. And so actually 2 commented on this video, which was simply interesting because it's proposing the idea that what would happen if so-called wild and predatory animals would never have been exposed to, let's say, hostile human behavior. And just the question, if humans would relate differently. And here the idea basically, I guess, being that these are probably animals raised with humans, but also just overall, I think it's an interesting thought experiment. What if in their own life and ideally even genetic memory, animals would not have the idea of, oh, this, like a snake or whatever, this shape, form, 2 legs, 2 arms standing up is a big threat for me because people regularly go out to hunt the deer or whatever.
Okay, so you're saying like if you train animals like from so you're talking about
one thing is
you're
if
talking
you
about
would
the
train
crazy
them,
people that take like lions into their house and like raise like chimpanzees that pull up.
Well, that's one part, but the other part, which is an open question, is how would animals naturally react if in their own life and maybe even the former generation or whatever, they never had a negative experience with humans. You know what I mean?
What is
or
the
a hostile
percentage?
Experience.
What is the percentage of chimpanzee owners that breastfeed their chimpanzees? Because it's higher than like 1%. You know what I mean? It's like pretty high. It's probably way higher than that. From the amount of times I've seen it in a documentary. So I just think that there's a lot of circumstances where people have tried to raise animals to be humanized in a lot of ways. And that's, they're trying to give them the opportunity to not be, they're trying to civilize them, right? That's basically what we've done throughout history. And we can see what happens. It's called domestication. And so domestication tends to be a loss of function, a loss of size. You look at a fox, for instance, it loses the epigenetic response to turn orange during that puberty part of its life. So eventually you get these gray foxes. Parts of the brain don't develop. Animals get smaller. The wolves turn to dogs. There's a lot of issues with domestication. It's not necessarily that it builds up and civilizes and uplifts.
Sure. I mean, one part is domestication. I'm not necessarily only referring to that, but just the question, what if you would have completely so-called wild animals, but they were simply not exposed to any, colonial wild game hunters or whatever else? Would they naturally have a different response toward humans by default? That is the question I'm having. I don't think there is a clear answer to this, but
depends on the kind of animal, I guess. Right? So most animals don't have a natural predatorial response to humans because they're all smaller than humans. The ones that were bigger than humans are pretty much killed off by humans at this point, right? Like we don't even have rhinos to worry about. So, I mean, I think this emphasis on like bears and things like that. Bears don't want to attack you. It's a lot to run at you. And so unless you get really up in their space, bears are pretty chill. My brother and I one time were walking through Alaska talking loudly like I do, and then all of a sudden we see this black bear and we just both grab each other's hands like, this, and we're like, ah, like blah, 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 like just making lots of noises and stuff like that. And then we kind of like you got to stand your ground, but you don't like get at the thing, right? You know what I mean? And then the thing like backs off, and then you kind of back off because bears are like big dogs or like New Yorkers. You're just like, yeah, come on, and then you just walk away, and you're usually okay, right? That's basically,
yeah, I mean, even already this approach without, any potential fantasies about how animals maybe could even react friendly if they
but
never
look
had a
at this
negative
liberal
experience.
arts, this freaking liberal arts student.
Sure,
Let me get in the face of a fox. I'm gonna get right in the face of the. I hope that look at that fox. That fox is like, I am terrified. What is that thing? Is that person trying to kill me? Like she's like, oh, it doesn't think it's a gun. I'm gonna shoot it with a camera. Like I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I think these people need to leave
but what I'm
animals
saying
alone.
is even just the approach that you just mentioned already would be great to teach, because then
this guy's
at
like way
least
up in this bear's face. He's like, look at this bear. He's like, what? Bro, this is my area. Did you see how much space there is out here? This is like going to a movie theater that no one's in because it's Joker 2 and sitting right next to the other person and then just being like, shh, I can't hear Gaga. This is not acceptable. I don't know. This is maybe the distance. At this point, I would say like this guy could be attacked because he's so close to the thing. I mean, and this animal, the way it defends itself is to run with its face at things. So what is the point of trying to tempt nature that has nothing to do with humanity, has nothing to do with civility? That's just the way an herbivore defends itself with its toenail like face, right? This is just, I don't know. Leave the damn thing alone. All right, and then in Japan, you know what they're doing in Japan? This is a great example. Freaking deers are these giant rats, okay? And they breed, and then they're horrible. And what they'll end up
friends today, Andres.
And they have Lyme's disease, and so what they'll end up doing is they'll spread ticks and all these horrible insects, and people start to die. Not only do they die, they also get these weird lifelong diseases that aren't good for you. Let me say that. And the food is started to be blighted by the ticks and these things. Not only that, they look. Do you see grass? Do you see grass? They cannot have grass because the deer are going to eat all of the grass. This is a world designed to breed this pest. It's the worst possible thing. I think I brought this up at some point. In Japan now,
but then isn't it curious why exactly the Japanese would be falling for this ploy?
It's an act. No, they're good now. They're good now. I'm trying to explain. Like, so basically, what happened was in the 70s, the Japanese, because of the Rockefeller Trilateral Commission Agreement, protected endangered species, including a species of deer, which overrun, rampantly destroying major wildlife and foliage because they were never naturally local deer. They were brought into Japan to begin with, like in the 12th century. And so these deer ended up...
Did I hear correctly that was a Rockefeller mandate?
Yeah, it was a Rockefeller for the Trilateral Commission because they wanted a LEED program. They had a number of things that they made Japanese businesses do in order to commit LEED. And also, this is involved with Peru. There's a whole bunch to this. But the point is, the natural preservation of animals in Japan led to a devastating effect where all sorts of animals were displaced, including, look at this, the freaking city right now. Look, there's like, how many freaking deer? Do you see how many deer are in the streets of Japan? So what they ended up having to do, because the problem with deer is they breed like hundreds of deer. Okay, it's like dozens of deer make dozens more deer. It's beyond Amish people, and so within a generation they have thousands of deer that are coming into the city. Nowadays they have, I think since 2007, they've made laws to legalize hunting of deer again because they weren't allowed to hunt them. That was a big thing, and so all of a sudden they're just like, help, there are deer everywhere. What do I do? So now it's like they can hunt deer, and that wasn't enough. So in 2015, they started a policy of selling, and they have like a ministry. You know how we have like Ministry of Milk and Dairy and Orange Juice and all this crap?
Ministry of Deer.
They have a venison.
My deer ministry.
They have a my deer venison ministry. So what they do is they try to convince people to eat venison. And so I can't see if you can see that there, but what's going on is they're walking around a food cart right now. Can you see that? There's a food cart over there. Over there to the right.
Really? Oh yeah.
Okay, so it's the very far right.
It literally says.
What do you
food.
think? What do you think? What do you think they're feeding at the food cart there? All right, let me show you some Japanese.
Poison? What do you mean?
Let me show you. So in Japan, what's very common now is they try to show you how you can eat venison. Street cart. Venison. Street carts of venison everywhere. So if you like to eat venison, all you got to do is go to Japan, and they just like will sell you deer for like deer for dollars. It is the cheapest thing right now. Is just getting venison. You can get venison.
I even recently heard that supposedly lobster was like served on some railway as like a super cheap thing, and only then they made it popular, and now people are shelling out their whole salary to eat lobster. When originally it was like a poor people's food, supposedly. I don't know.
That might happen with deer, but the point is deer breed so freaking hard. I get that lobster could do that because they're like bugs, but it takes a certain amount of time, and I don't know. I think the Japanese are trying to encourage people to use trains more because there's a lot of issues in Japan. You know, the population is dropping. They have 1 million people immigrating into Japan for the first time ever a year or something like that. They put in like 250,000 people, and there's about 1 million new citizens from Philippines and from Brazil, where, you know, they did have Japanese culture in Brazil, but essentially they're bringing in all sorts of new people, and Japan's not ready for it. And a lot of people are like 80, you know, so they're not taking trains and they're not doing the work. And so they're trying to be revitalize Japan. But it's super cheap, right? Like food's cheap. It's cool to be in Japan. I'm just saying the deer thing was a bad idea. And now they're in this situation where they have excess. And by the way, Japan's not alone. Even though it's a small island, so it's a bigger example, the United States has a huge deer problem. Like deer, I'm seeing deer as we're talking. Like you don't understand. Like there are literally deer right now walking by. Like they're everywhere. Well, they're everywhere.
I think that's kind of great because I'm not wishing this on anyone, but if there really should be, let's just say, any sort of even abbreviated supply shortage or anything, I mean,
Beba Boli says that it was completely ridiculous. Completely, he's right. Don't ever. He's completely. This is not true. It could be totally true. Don't ever say that. It could not be.
Anyhow,
categorically false.
Then I guess at least, you know, the red states that have a good amount of hunters and gun owners will be fine for a few weeks if they can just hunt the deer that's all around them, you know. So.
Oh my God. Okay, so then the Gray came up in the sync yesterday talking about the book The Gray. Is this about the aliens, the Gray themselves, or what do you got here?
So honestly, I can't tell you yet because I just somehow got this referenced, but I didn't get around to like watch it yet. Someone on my chat commented and said, this may actually be like, you know, common trope. But here, this is interesting. Albert the Grey, Mehmet the Sixth. This is something I want to know more about. So I guess I'll eventually go around to watching it. And I don't even know what the Grey are supposed to be in this context. As someone said that some of the timeline presented.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it may well be. because I think they're also closely related to the Jesuits. I mean, which Catholic
Right.
order isn't, but they are maybe particularly related.
That was the deal. Was after the Jesuits lost everything, everything was given to the Franciscans, and so from wearing all black to wearing gray, right? Yeah.
Epidemic model. Oh, here we go.
The Bavarian Sea. The Bavarian Sea. Oh, we should go hang out there. That's got to be a really expensive lake to swim in.
Chiemsee. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. So everyone check out The Gray by Marcia Ramallo on the Blue. I haven't seen it yet. I'll be honest. He just brought this up, but it looks cool, so we'll watch it, right? I guess.
Oh my God! So just because you mentioned this, and
it's
I
9
thought
hours long. It's 9 hours.
Yeah.
What the freaking heck? Okay.
Yeah, and I had thought that the Franciscans relate to the Jesuits, but here, so this is the official history of my high school, which I always like to bring up. But apparently here, what they say, I posted in the private chat, that first, so this is about the
Epic logo, right? Sweet.
Akademisches Gymnasium Wien, and here say it was founded by the University of Vienna, and then first given to the Jesuits, and then it would actually transfer to the Piarist order officially. But also you have to remember that the current building where it's in was only built in 1849 or something. So when it was taken over to the new building officially, it was officially already a secularized school. But anyhow, that's the backstory. They say first the Jesuits and then the Piarists, and I just was pulling up the Piarists, and here you see their logo. I'm like, what is this? Yeah, I never even saw it before.
Super classic Catholic logo, right? That's their, kind of like the Freemason logo for the Catholic Church, basically the spider, I like to call it.
But they have a nice sun. I'm about to count the rays, but even just that in itself is quite similar to the Jesuit order. And again, we have this sun worship symbolism, which is quite auspicious, dare I say.
Yeah, I like also that some of the spikes are swirly and some of them are perfect. You know what I mean? That's it's like, woo, okay. Woo. There's gotta be something about that. What about the emu war? This is like almost what we're talking about. Oh my God.
Yeah, there we go.
You were just being super patient. Okay, I see.
Because I can't say much about it. I just in some chat or whatever, I read about this and I was like, what? What's going on?
I was like, when I saw
you know
emu
more
war,
about
I
this,
was like,
sure.
surely you don't mean the emu
like
war.
emulator wars. No, it's this bird apparently.
Yeah, no, because and this is a crazy thing that they did in Australia. They created all sorts of devastation. Okay, first off, Australia, who God even knows what Australia was like at one point? Because we have these giant lizards that were burned off by the Aborigine. They burned the entire bush outback, which allowed for new life to emerge. But that's so recently that Australia is a completely new place, even just a few thousand years ago. Then we have the introduction by the British colonialists of what? I mean, I think at first there's even Egyptians bringing the Egyptian dog. That's one of the first things. Or maybe it's vice versa from Australia to Egypt. But first there's definitely travel between the India and African and the Sentinel Island people and Aborigines. But by the time the colonials are there, you bringing camels and emus and crazy like rodents and snakes and things are coming on the boats by accident too. And so it's just all this crazy stuff that they've introduced. I don't know if that was like the point, if that was what you're bringing up, but they eventually had to try to like kill off all these crazy things that they'd introduced into Australia. And New Zealand's even worse, right? Because New Zealand was nothing.
He was later called the Minister of the Emu War. No, I just found it was hilarious, and I kind of expected you would know more about this. But yeah, it's a perfect segue from the deer story, which was, I don't know how we even ended up there. Well, because of the wild animal story.
Yeah. Well, endemic, eh? Endemic. Well, I don't know. Let's see about that. Basically, there were so many other.
This one looks kind of dangerous, actually. The one he caught. So
that's the problem, is that people forget that animals used to be commonly bigger than humans, and we used to deal with that. And now we live in a very subjugated and domesticated reality, so much more than we were a century ago. And that was already so much more than we were a century prior than that.
So you're saying the animals were bigger and maybe some humans were taller? Oh, let's
I
not
mean,
talk about that.
not even just that, but like, yeah, dude, like the giant birds, man. Because like the flightless birds it's not a joke. Like you do not want to have a razor sharp beak slicing through your bones after it's been chasing you at 30 miles an hour. You know, it's just flightless birds are freaky. Okay. All right. So Old World, we did that one. Now it's time for Earth Shape, which I think is even weirder than giant birds. You cannot blame me. But Nachiketa has a video that we can go about. Here, look at this. This is the map.
This is the Urbano Monti map, and at least according to Ironworks, which is one of the next interviews, apparently this variant is different from some variants you can see in certain museums. Although then when I checked it out on his channel, it looked like he had some kind of Buddhist rendition of it with Chinese script, which, if we're into alternative chronology, may be equally questionable. But anyhow, even just the fact that it may be that digitized copies are different from physical copies, I can't tell you about the exact differences yet. Always good comments. But
I'm
if
glad
you go
that
to
you're
the
not eating kids and you're eating steak. But is this a picture of your intestines right now? Like, is that what you're trying to say? Like, I don't quite get it.
This kind of reminds me of this image where supposedly you saw an X-ray of but this may be whatever, of a Chinese woman who supposedly had eaten raw pork for many years. It didn't look too good, so.
Well, you probably shouldn't eat raw pork. What?
But
Why
I
would
mean,
you?
yeah,
Jeez.
whatever. So anyhow, this is the map, and you go on the after show, and then all right, because this was an interview that Nachiketa did with Flat Earth Banjo, I believe he's called. And the after show was just great because Jake was on, I think maybe Z was on, quite a few interesting individuals with some knowledge and good perspectives sharing, and also someone new came to the show who was showing his models. Maybe if you go to the latter part, there's some 3D models. This is just the intro music. Yeah, there is a map, and this geocentric truth is basically presenting some of his the modelings he did. And I'm not that deep into being able to explain all of it, but mainly they just speak of what's currently going on, and also the by me often referenced final experiment and their views on it. And at least these guys pretty much all agree that it's a false dichotomy, as I had mentioned.
Based.
There's a Q&A video also, and it's also relating to the next one, I believe, because I tried to somehow make it sense. Yeah, this is the last one, but first the Live with Ironwork, 2000, the next tab.
Okay.
Before we go to this one. All right, so this one is the interview. Oh yeah, first there's actually a new song by Conspiracy Music Guru we can even play, because he's the one guy who's not copyright striking everyone. Great new song. And yeah, here again, they talk about TFE with Ironworks in this case. So yeah, anyone who wants to stay on top of this, worth checking out, because as I mentioned before, it may well be that with this whole Atlantic experiment coming up this December, where apparently even William Shatner, Candace Owens' editor, and Neil deGrasse Tyson, and God knows who else, they all suddenly want to go there this year. And also supposedly there will be some kind of SpaceX satellite for the very first time over Antarctica. And it's just all very auspicious how all of these events correlate just at the end of this year. So we may well expect some new, how should I say, not exactly expansive and neutral Netflix special documentary coming out early next year. That's kind of the, let's say, prophecy regarding this whole thing, because both so-called globers and flat earthers will go there to observe a 24-hour sun, and then basically they will pretend as if a sky observation changes whether the earth right below your feet curves or not. So yeah. Anyhow, before we go on to the next one, I want please show the Igor Volk, because we skipped over that one. Because I recently wanted to find it, and then I was looking through all the cosmonauts, and then actually I was like something Stolyarev something, and I was like, okay, if that's the guy, I'll look for him on Odyssey, because unfortunately too often these kind of videos are not easy to find on YouTube. But then the first thing that actually came off was Gennady from the Transhumanist Party and one of your videos on Odyssey. Yeah? But that was for a different cosmonaut, maybe just because the name is somewhat similar. And what you have here is quite interesting. This is a video I had seen a few years ago. Just to point it out, this is at least an official cosmonaut. And at the very end of the interview, he's basically asked about the shape of the Earth. And he's basically saying it's flat. And he's also saying how should I say, no one's been to space in the way you imagine it. So take it or leave it. Of course, that's evil Russian disinformation.
Right,
but I just find it curious that someone who's actually been there has his own questions and is willing, at least at this old age, to present it.
Bro, if the Russians never went to the moon, that's all you need to know. I'm telling you, bro. That's all you need to know. Okay, anyway. So, synchronization. This is Japanese Budo Karate. What do you want with this? What do you want with the Budo?
So this is something a friend showed me, quite interesting, because here basically what you're doing is it's like a mirroring technique. So the guy on the right is first taking a active stance, and the other individual can react. But when he's relaxing himself, then it's basically, I guess, through mirror neurons or whatever else, relaxing the other individual and basically preventing them from reacting, or I'm not sure of the proper term now, depriving them, let's say, from their ability to give a quick response. And so here I just find it interesting in terms of, I mean, hopefully no one has to get into physical conflict, but in any case, what it means if you yourself stay relaxed and if you're able to consistently stay relaxed even when you're active. So I find that interesting.
So you're saying
principle.
like, what are you saying? So like when this guy like lets this guy hit him in the face, that's good because he's relaxed? Is that the point of that lesson? What the hell are you telling me, vegetarians? I swear to God. Okay, Tupac on growing up poor. His rise to fame in his future. Poor Tupac, man. What do you want me to say about this? I love this street. I love walking through Venice Beach, man. I don't know.
So this is congenitally, how do you call it?
Congenitally? What are you trying to say?
Yeah, I believe so. Maybe no, not congenitally related. Tangentially
Congenially.
Maybe also
tangential
related to the whole drama going on, and I just want
tangentially. What did you do to me? Tangentially related.
Yeah,
right.
Okay. To the whole drama going on now, and I would just want to point that out. I'm not sure if I had brought this up before. So there's two reasons I'm bringing this up. Number one, there's actually a time code on that video, which you somehow conveniently managed to skip over. If you go back to the link and you click exactly on the video, it should have the time code on it, because there's a few seconds I want to show, which is quite, yes, exactly, perfect, which is quite curious.
Hold on, I gotta open it again. Even though you wanted me to do it that way, I gotta do it this way. So I'm supposed to try to get the audio. You want me to play the audio?
No, you don't. We don't need the audio. Okay. But stop.
Okay.
Okay. So
it's at 9:45 is when this is though, right? It's at 9:43. So I had to get to 9:43. This is where we're right here. Yeah, right here.
Good. Yes.
Point in your early life were you introduced to this quote unquote thug mentality?
This right here.
Okay, yeah. So it's the next video will make one part of this more clear, but I find it highly interesting because I'm pretty sure, many people back then have been watching this. He was one of the most famous individuals. And now watch very closely what happens when the camera starts panning. It's just like 30 seconds from now.
Okay. I like also that she's wearing a $300 like.
And now watch on the top left.
Keanu Reeves.
You see that white thing on the top left?
Uh-huh.
And it's vanishing.
Well,
and I'm not even saying that that's anything particular, but all I'm saying is how likely is it that they would pan the camera at that point and show whatever it is they have in the background?
I mean, in Los Angeles, over the beach in Venice Beach, all the time, there are helicopters, there are planes, there are private planes or private helicopters. There are blimps that have like notes and things like that. There are parasailers. There's probably even sky jumpers, skydivers sometimes.
Sure, but do any of these?
Wait, watch it. It leaves camera in a reasonable way. You can see it there, and then it
doesn't
right
leave.
There.
It vanishes.
Yeah, it does. No, it does not. It
doesn't
vanish.
leave the frame.
I knew you were gonna say that. I'm gonna prove you wrong.
Okay, please prove me wrong.
Oh my God. Okay, so 1 second. Here it is. We're just play it in slow motion, just so you don't get confused. Playback speed 25%. Okay, so you see it right here, and what I'm going to show you is it's going to go up here, here, and then the camera's going to pan away, so it doesn't disappear. It just goes off a frame. Okay, ready? All right, click, 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 boom. Do you see it? Go. All right, let's do it one more time.
It does.
Okay. All right.
Yes, yes.
So
Well done,
just,
Andreas. That's
I
why I was
mean,
showing this to you.
because I'm not a schizophrenic. Okay, that was a good test. That was a great, like, because a skits test is better than
As long as that statement doesn't reflect upon me, then well.
No, you're good.
It
I mean, you just
depends
want to
whether
be
it's an
sure.
advantage or not.
If you were like in Los Angeles and you saw a UFO, you would not be the first person. You know, it's kind of like being in San Diego and
Oh, and I'm pretty sure it would look a little bit more spectacular than that. I wasn't even suggesting any of that. I just found it curious. But please show the next video, which is the main point I actually wanted to bring up. This was more like a random side thing.
Let's go open the new tab machine. This is the Tupac Shakur high school interview.
So if you want, we can. If you want, or if we can listen into this for like half a minute, and then everyone can say what they want to.
They'll steal it.
Or don't say anything, but just think what you want to say.
Don't you think they're gonna like give me trouble if I play it? Like,
no, not for 30 seconds. I think.
Oh, this is the one where he talks about. This is the one where he talks about like if I committed suicide, that would be too overwhelming. I feel like committed suicide. Is that the one? Okay.
No, the point is his tonality and yes.
Oh my God, I'm committing suicide. That's too much, overwhelming. If you know about it, it won't be so overwhelming.
Girl, you fabulous, all right? Like you were raised by your mama, and you free, all right? You brave. I love Tupac. Whatever. Like who cares?
No, it's not the thing. The point is, and anyone who wants to know more about this, I can only recommend the interviews made by Jaguar Wright about the whole drama thing. I referenced them earlier. But this is all about the whole confusion thing, you know, because you put certain people in front, you make them act a part, make them act gangster.
I think everybody knows that Tupac was kind of. Everybody knows Tupac.
Well,
was gay,
I mean,
right?
honestly, I never really listened to him too much. Anytime I saw like anything, I was like, yeah, looks kind of strange. And I mean, by now,
he's just gay. It's totally reasonable. He's a completely reasonable guy.
No, and it's perfectly fine, and that's not the issue. The point being is portraying something you're not, you know, for the sake of corporate brand, whatever, MK Ultra brainwash.
I think he was
confusion.
what they branded him as. Like he was like a poet from a African American, like disparaged, socially economically disparaged, engendered
grammar
ghetto.
School student.
Ghetto though, like he's black, and like that wouldn't matter in another place, but in the United States in the 90s, it was effectively a caste system, right? So he was someone who was definitely above the caliber of a lot of the people around him, but there were a lot of people around him that were of high caliber, and the entire community was suppressed. That was kind of the idea. So he comes out of that as a diamond in the rough, right? Like this is an empowered individual who's striven to communicate with words instead of with violence, etc. And his mom is a major part of that. I don't know. I never see this as that
I know the official cultural positive backstory for the whole movement, which I'm certain is existing and organic.
What's your Tupac pill for me? What are you trying to say? I mean, like everyone wants to talk about how Tupac got killed, like and why. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? What do you got?
You said everything. I'm just saying it doesn't look like he's a whatever gangster something.
What does a gangster look like, man? You know what I mean? What does that even mean?
Not like this.
Okay, sure. Then you've got like
I'm telling you that.
You've got a Hollywood.
I'm so racist or bigoted.
You've got no. It's not racist. You have a Hollywood romanticism of what a gangster is. Then, if you think that this like does, you know what I mean? Like the world is a little bit more multifaceted.
So the whole point is what he was portraying, and that basically it was an act, which is not too surprising by now or anything. But that's just the main point I want to bring out is what is the corporate brand someone is given, and the expectations built, and the cultural influence built, and what is the real individual. And I guess with him, yes.
I don't know. I'm just thinking about like I don't know if I should even say this, but like there's a lot of gangsters who are kind of queer. You know what I mean? Like I'm not even just saying like J. Edgar Hoover, who was like into gangsters and into wearing clothes. I'm talking about like Al Capone, you know what I mean?
But this opens up a whole other problem, and this is my, let's say, only real problem with the whole thing, is that this apparently includes the most, I'm not even sure how to say, forms of trauma bonding and so on, which is,
like what about the British gangsters? There's that guy who's like does anyone British here? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Like Freddie Johnson? Hold on a second. Freddie Johnson. If anybody's British, and knows what I'm talking about. Freddie Sykes, someone's saying. Okay, so I can't even find. So there was Freddie Sykes Johnson, like one of the most infamous gay or bisexual London underworld with the Krays, with Ronnie Kray, right? Let's see here. The Kray twins. Okay. There we go. So, nope, not that window. That was my ChatGPT window. Here. The Kray twins. Identical twin brothers from Hagerton, prominent in the 1950s until their arrest in 1968. The gang known as The Firm, based in Bethnal Green, right? Pretty famous, I think, with like people who are interested in that sort of thing. Like they're organized criminals, and I think a major reason for it was because they weren't impressing their wives. You know, they're looking for making money, and so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of weird people, I think, involved with organized crime. I don't know if it's weird to be gay necessarily, but it was in the 50s in Britain, and so I think it's reasonable that they found themselves into unique lines of work, right? And they didn't have to impress their wives. They didn't have to like worry about these women who were scared for their lives all the time, right?
Yeah, I love how you put a positive spin on everything. Let's just proceed.
I try my best. Operation P. Diddy. I don't know how I'm going to put a positive spin on this, I'll be honest.
No, the positive spin here is just that this guy has very interesting views. I brought him up before. I still think we should have him on the channel. Last time I tried contacting him, the reCAPTCHA kind of got stuck on me on his YouTube. I hope there is a way to get in touch, but also he will soon appear on Sean Atwood, who has a quite big true crime channel. And apparently he's getting invited there, which I guess is great because he has very interesting perspective. Of course, I'd love to know how much he's on top of the whole new chronology idea, but he's basically wary about all kinds of strange funds and strange orders and academic lock-in and so on, which he apparently himself has experienced in various forms. He was a professor at, I believe it's called UC Davis, amongst other universities. And definitely appears to be one of them, how should I say, quote unquote, more based teachers.
Davis was pretty cool. I remember like they had a lot of like pretty, that's basically where 4chan comes from. It basically comes out of UC Davis. And there's a lot of, I remember there was.
Now it all makes sense.
One time I was there and they just built a mosque and a bunch of people were like all, it was one of the first times I realized, wait, like the people who are upset don't get it and the people that are for it don't get it. Because the people that are for it are these like super liberal kids who are getting pepper sprayed on the ground and like love animals and everything. And then the people who are like worried about it were the conservatives that these Muslims were going to be just like there's these super conservative Muslim kids showing up at Davis that just wanted to do their work and go to school. And they were awesome, right? And they were like exactly like the kids who were worried about them and the exact nightmare of the people that were trying to help them come to California. It was incredible. I don't know. I like Davis. Anyway.
Sounds like a fun combination. Yeah, here, this is actually something I couldn't get through watching whole because I had the impression there's some obfuscation going on there. But still interesting. This is an interview with someone who apparently worked in Antarctica and is making different statements about no-fly zones. I mean, maybe also accurately pointing out some potential fake news or sensationalism that's occurring. But it doesn't seem as if the guy being interviewed is, how should I say, up to the idea in terms of looking outwards of the whole thing. And also, yeah, I didn't get the latter part where they maybe talk about geoengineering. This is one of the channels I had referenced last time because it seems this is one of those, whereas talking about weather manipulation on a big channel is now perfectly acceptable. As I had pointed out earlier. Yeah, I still have to watch the whole thing.
CNN weather minute. Hold on, this is the X per second. Rob Dew channel. I don't know how many far pages down I'm gonna have to go here to get to like the weather thing. Oh my gosh, he just had to post this because this lady was like, "Oh, weather manipulation and this crazy." I don't know. This lady's face makes me so uncomfortable. You know, I don't know what it is. This is like the evil, like changeling version of Jennifer Connelly, right? This is the opposite of Jennifer Connelly. This is like the Substance, Demi Moore kind of thing, but like inside out from Hellraiser. It's like the Pinhead version. Okay, so she's saying all this lie and like egregious mind control, hypno speak. And then Rob D posts like the obvious documents like we're talking about. It's just like crazy. Like, who the hell is pretending that there's no geoengineering at this point? Shut up. Go home. It makes me sad. I don't understand how you could even pretend this at this point on television, except that only people watching television are probably like 70, and they can't think straight. All right. I feel better.
That's what you said. Yes, it's possible. It exists, unfortunately.
I feel bad. That was rude. All right. I'm sorry. So back to reality. We got through that section. That was Earthshape and New World, and now it's time. Wait, no, there was a couple more. BRICS and Oostenrijk, and then we'll get on to health because I think health is going to be fun to talk about. Let me just open some of those pages right there. Okay. So this is with our dear favorite, the Duran. I'm a big fan of Cristoforo and Mercurius, Alexander and Alex, right? And then now it's like a triple Alex alliance with Alex Craner. So pretty cool.
Yeah, you probably recently watched more of this than I did. I basically fell into the Duran rabbit hole when the whole Ukraine thing kicked off.
Triple A show.
They had exactly. They had the most, how should I say, balanced view, and also presented whatever Eastern perspectives there may be, and I think relate them quite diplomatically, shall I say, and also trying to have a higher level perspective. They unfortunately don't really talk about new chronology, because even here, like, I think Alex Greiner is giving examples, and I'm like, oh, this and that example, like, if you knew about new chronology, you wouldn't use those. And of course, still here is always begs the question with the geopolitics analysis, to what extent do you factor in the possibility that really all the world is a stage? So it seems to me like from an inside point of view, their analysis is one of the most high level and well-rounded that I'm aware of. Now, I haven't been watching them recently
They're
so much, but overall,
absolutely the best analysis is from
exactly.
Absolutely.
But it is still without the assumption, let's say, that it's possible that all the world is a stage. Of course, also here we can question, because even if it's all monolithic, within the monolith, you still have different parties fighting, and it may, split up on different levels. But
I don't think it's not super relevant to their particular issue. Like, and so Cristoforo is like always talking about Greece, right? Well, Alex was the grandson of the governor of Greece in the late 19th, early 20th century. And so his association with the Hellenization of Russia places him like after the Tartarian iconoclasm and this neo-Russification.
Tartarian iconoclasm, nice. Yes.
Right, and the neo-Russification, because neo-Russification is also the identity of a Greek Russia, and it's very interesting. Like, that's a big part of what Russia is today. Is this idea of the way that the Germans kind of liked the Roman Empire, because the Roman Empire called them barbarians, right? So there's this psychological thing that the Germans wanted to be the most civilized people because they were called barbarians. So similarly, the Rus, as Vikings and as Scandinavians and as Middle Easterners, right? Because Russia's so big, they wanted to be the Byzantium. They wanted to be the continuation of the Greek Roman, kind of the Greek Empire, right? In a lot of ways, the conqueror of Iran. So the true heir to Tehran, as Dugan has said, but also it's the Hellenistic, and I think that's a big part of why they look. Look at, they're using Greek letters, they're using Greek words. Everything about Russia is a decidedly Hellenistic movement. It's a shift towards Greek thought that occurs
from
in the last
1900,
from about 1900, from maybe even from about 1812. Because before that, you have to think of Slavic thought differently, and Old Russian is different, and the way that they communicate as more Indo-Aryan, right, or Aryan, right, like this. There's further connections with Sanskrit. There's further connections with the East, and they divorced themselves from that over the last 500 years to be more Greek, right? Because they think of that as high culture.
I'm not sure about the 500 years, but yes.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, yeah, like 300 to 400 years. It's been the divorcing of, I mean, there's a far more Arabic, and you can look at like even just official history wise, right? There are tons of examples of the Mongolian horde separating Russia from the West. And that isolation allows Russia to be its own culture. And it's emergent that there's an Eastern influence there until they decide not to, which is within the last century. In the last century, they decide they don't really want to be associated that hard with the East. They want to be the offspring and heir of the Greeks, right?
Yeah, right. But this, from what I understand, would only have been from maybe 1900. I'm not sure, did we speak with George about this Hellenization and how this has been, I mean, quite recently, because even at least, I don't want to say anything wrong now, but I mean, the modern nation states, not usually 1850s, but not so much before 1900 in their newer versions.
I mean, there was classical education. There was, you have to like read Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. Basically, all of a sudden you have classicism, neoclassicalism, like, but also classicism. So the movement, there's a push towards education, of literacy within the elite caliber class. These are the people that build the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks movement and take over Russia.
Yes, this is early 20th century. Yes.
Yeah. But like but even in the late 19th century,
sure.
Pan-Hellenism. Pan-Hellenism becomes this big idea because it's like, look at neoclassical architecture. Let's revitalize and
neoclassical.
Right. Well, because there's like I think there really are people that are saying we can figure out how to master these buildings and live in these buildings, but there's also people that are saying we can build things and we can erector sets. Like the late 19th century is also the erector set period. You've got all of these pieces of steel that are being built. Like Carnegie figured out that if he had machines running 24 hours a day, he could produce enough steel. I think we talked about this last week, that you could build with that steel. And so as long as you had prefab material and people had these bars, they could build stuff out of those pieces. And so you've got rebar structures like Eiffel Tower that emerges at that period because assembly philosophy becomes scalable, right? I don't know, whatever. So Comp G, well, you got, this is another thing you want to show about Austria. Look at that beautiful flag. And look at that guy's tailored suit and how tight his thighs right there. It looks like tight. You know what I mean? I feel like he needs to bike more.
Yeah, can you please read the title for us?
Kommt jetzt die Ampel, alles gut, Österreich, 1906.
Yes. Alles Gute, Österreich. So I'm just bringing this up because recently brought up Austrian politics. To anyone who for some strange reason wants to know something about it or watch commentary, these two guys, they're making like a fun political commentary. They were against the lockdowns, which was great, which is also where they, let's say, got their popularity. Unfortunately, I would say, but maybe fortunately for them, for popularity's sake, they don't necessarily go deep into research or alternative theories, but generally have, how should I say, a somewhat critical view of the whole system and the whole shenanigans. And what you see at the very beginning, just to give the briefest explanation of what's going on in Austria right now, at the very beginning, when you see the old guy, or even here, the guy in the background, this is the Austrian president. It's actually, you can even leave it running maybe. Because then you see different politicians. And basically in Austria, what happened now, I guess 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, is a vote for, you would call it Congress, and the president gets voted indirectly. So he had a vote about, I guess now 4 years ago or something, which was kind of peculiar because that's one of the few presidential votes they had to redo at least once or even 2 times, I'm not exactly sure, because supposedly the glue on some kind of voting cards they were sending didn't stick or whatever. That was the official explanation. My understanding of this, and there were even analyses back then which were looking at inconsistencies or strange percentage patterns between different parties, and also especially between the votes that were counted within a district or within a school, where you go to vote, and the so-called mail-in votes, right? And also in a more recent vote in Austria. I believe it was the European Union vote. You also had very strange, apparently consistent percentage shifts from the number of cards that were given or number of votes that were given within a locale physically and the mail-in votes. Whereas, of course, if it's organic, you would have differing variables. But if it looks like, oh, it's almost always 20% that this or that party gains, it's at the very least highly suspicious. Anyhow, this vote, how he got in, was also, in my view, highly suspicious. And he's a Green Party president. And still, he doesn't appear to be as, how should I say, grand as he portrays himself. He literally did not say anything during the whole lockdowns. He was completely on the party line because the party was the Black Party and the Green Party in government during the lockdowns. And but what he's doing now he's suddenly becoming active. Why? Because the Freedom Party, which was the only party that did any criticism against any measures during the lockdowns, they now gained the most votes. So about 28% or something. And now everyone is pretending and playing like, oh, actually, this is the guy. Go back a bit, because then we can see all of them. I can present them and you can see the laughable joke of Austrian politics. Although if I look at American top politics, I'm not sure if I'm more impressed.
Is this the red spot right here? Or?
So here, yeah, that's very good. So here, and we go through them one by one just to know what's happening. So this is the guy who won the most votes. Stop, you're going through too fast.
Oh, sorry, hold on, okay. But first off, I like that the wall's there. Okay,
yeah, this is always the thing where they say, oh, this is the great door, where the door looks like the wall, and then they make a big fuss of it, every 5 years for 2 weeks, which is the only time this guy seems to be working. So let me go through them. If you just pause with each of those guys, then I can briefly explain what's going on. Yes, just a little bit.
Okay, so this guy first?
Now, yes, well, he was the guy. Yeah, let's see the first one. Yeah, it's first, yes. Because you get the most votes, so he got to talk with him first. That's the official way this goes.
Ursek or whatever?
No, this is who made the thing. His name is Kickel. Basically, he is similar to what Jörg Haider was about 20 years ago, when all of Europe and maybe even in America, you heard it, and they said, oh my God, this, I'm not using the term now, super far right-wing, whatever guy, got the most votes. We cannot possibly allow this. Even from what I understand, Guterres, who back then, if I look this up correctly, was the Prime Minister of Portugal, and now he's the effing director of the World Bank. Go figure.
Jeez.
He was one of those in 1999 who kind of like called Austria and said like, oh, if you do this, we're going to sanction you, this and that, you can't do it. Yeah. And what they did back then was actually, I don't want to say wrong now. No, but I think they had the most votes. Yeah. And they basically said, yeah, you can be part of the government, but basically you can't be the chancellor. So even though the guy that won, they said, okay, it's fine that you won, and it's fine that the guys voted for you because you're the head of the party, right, as well. But please go back to Carinthia. That's basically what happened. And then he split the party and this and that. And then auspiciously in 2008, Jörg Haider was killed in a strange car accident. He was in a Phaeton, which is one of the most indestructible cars ever. And he has very strange lesions and so on. He was never drinking, but supposedly this evening he was super drunk. And there's even podcasts of, I believe, an Israeli newspaper or something where they joke about it. I'm not going into it deeper, but there's also, there's a rabbi with the name of, I wish I knew his name now, Oberrabbiner von Wien. And I don't have the name on file right now, but who wrote a book actually about Jörg Haider and the potential whatever may have happened with him. And it's funny that up to this day in politics and in discussions, there is only one somewhat known political pundit I know that publicly states that he does not believe that it was the drunk driving situation, which is doubly suspicious because they did blood samples, of course. Then they locked the blood samples away for 10 years. And then when the release time came due, they were kind of like, oh, sorry, we lost it. So I'm like, I'm sorry, but it doesn't make the official story more believable. But please put him back on. So this is like the history of 20 years ago, and now we have a similar situation because again, a Freedom Party guy is winning the most votes, and all the other parties basically. But please stop every time because otherwise we're skipping over them. So still stay with him, the first guy.
Oh. Sorry, I thought we got to. Okay, don't worry, just keep going. I'll stop at him. All right, there you go.
All right. So he's now basically the guy who 20 years later
breaking the fourth wall. This is a perfect frame.
Yeah, He's the guy who's basically 20 years later achieving something similar as Jörg Haider did now 25 years ago, because his party got the most votes. And now what all the other parties are saying, yeah, it's so nice you got the most votes. And, they always go on about democracy and how important it is and so on. And I'm actually surprised that the Freedom Party got the most votes. I'm not really political in that sense, but I was surprised from an analysis point of view. That there was not some strange happening or whatever that still could have flipped the vote in some way, shape, or form.
Just to clear it up for anybody who's confused, he's not saying Al Qaeda, he's saying Al Qaeda, right? Is that what you're saying, or am I wrong here? Who's the person you're saying?
No, his name, the guy I was mentioning. It's funny because they were also known to have connections with Libya and so on. Jörg Haider. Okay. Jörg Haider.
Jörg Haider?
Yes.
Okay.
No, he already had it. Yes. Very good.
Right?
Very
okay,
good.
Cool.
Yes, very good.
I'm learning fast. Okay, so this guy looks like the kind of guy who would be assassinated. Like, look at his face. Like, he looks like the kind of guy who's like trying to get in trouble by being clever. Look at that gold tie. Okay. All right. So this is Jörg Haider.
That was the place where he was governor of. He then got the most votes. And also there is one talk by a guy called Ewald Stadler, who back then, I guess, was a compatriot. He was in the same party.
Well, this is just rude. They're like, his parents were members of the Austrian NDS. Well, come on. Like, it was literally impossible not to be.
Andreas, don't say it.
It was legally, like, impossible not to be. Like, that's just rude. That's just kind of like, okay, like, oh, his parents, like, they spoke Austrian in the house. Like, okay, chill out.
Well, like I said, the only documented forged or not connection in history I have about this is that maybe someone bearing my name was an officer in the Austro-Hungarian Empire Army. But of course.
Oh my God!
But anyways,
Robert Haider joined the DNS-FAB in 1929. Like, it's like, yeah, like, obviously, like, what? Like, unless you were a swing kid,
who couldn't,
shut up, yeah,
who could refuse?
Get over.
But anyways,
yeah, like,
please
I'm sorry.
pull it back up. And what's also kind of funny is, like, one of the guys, Ewald Stadler, he actually made talks about him maybe after his death. And then he was kind of joking about him and saying, because he was actually known, how should I say, maybe not to be perfectly straight. Yeah. And this Ewald Stadler made jokes about him and said, yeah, he was also getting involved with the Freemasons. But eventually they took issue with him because in the morning he kind of put up the Freemason robe. In the evening, he went to the club, to meet his voters and have fun. And he didn't take the Freemasonic guild or whatever as seriously as they would have wanted, according to Ewald Stadler, who's known to be a staunch, ultra-conservative Catholic guy, basically. So that's the backstory I can give here.
Kent knows it. Those freaking socks go hard, bro. Like, those socks go hard. Because you can't just get a computer. Like, this is one of those things, like, I love machinery and all that. Like, some things you can't get a machine to knit, Like, not really. Like, you can do a print. But if you want socks like that, you gotta do actual knitting. That's gonna take a human hand to make socks like that. I don't think that's related to our conversation at all. Anyway, so we're going back to the story. This is the next politician we're coming up. Are we good?
Yes.
We're good?
No,
okay.
Wait. Just stop. So to finish the story, and it may sound, how should I say, long-winded or something, but it is quite a big story in Austria. And again, I'm only bringing it up because all the world is a stage, and there may be many parallels also between what's happening on this political level in America, although there maybe it's easier because you only have two parties and the winner takes it all in various ways, although it's not really true with the senior executive service, the judges and all of that. But let's leave that aside for now, these superior control mechanisms. You can put him back up. So anyhow, now he won, and everyone else is pretending and saying, oh, actually, I'm sorry, we don't want to work with you. So this guy, now show him, maybe when he's looking at the camera. Yeah, this guy.
Oh, he goes so fast. He went so fast. Oh, I'll come back.
I can slow down the playback, maybe. It's easier to stop then.
Yeah,
because we're not listening to it anyways. Yeah, so he was the chancellor now for 5 years of the black supposedly conservative party in coalition with the Green Party. And the fun part is that the guy on the left-hand side, the now president, actually was. Please don't skip forward randomly.
I'm trying so hard not to. I'm trying really hard. It'll almost be okay, and we're good. Okay, I was trying to hold it as big as possible. It's hard.
All right. So the left-hand guy, Alexander van der Bellen, who also officially was a Freemasonic member, but only for the first 2 years or something, and then supposedly he's got nothing to do with it anymore. Although I've heard rumors it is differently, but anyways. Again, remind yourself, his vote was redone at least one time until he got into office. He lost against the Freedom Party candidate at that time, and he was the head of the Green Party for a long time until he handed it over. Then with the whole Greta Thunberg thing, the Green Party suddenly got many votes. And again, through a coalition of everybody against the Freedom Party, 5 years ago, he won the presidential election after his, they had to redo it because the glue didn't stick, right? And then now he's sitting here. And of course, now he's saying, oh, I'm so sorry. I never liked the Freedom Party. And he's not saying it directly, but instead of now doing what has always been done for ever since the Second Republic exists, I guess, maybe except the very first one, which may have been more installed by the Americans, but I don't know the details here. It was always like this, that the party with the most votes would get the official task to form a government, meaning they have the authority to talk with other companies, I want to say, well, take your pick, with other parties, and then get 51% of the Congress, of the parliament, because that's the legislature, and that's the general idea. What is assumed that you need to have a stable government, you need a basic majority, so you can basically push through anything that you agree upon within your coalition. And now, instead of telling the first guy that we showed, the Freedom Party guy, now you go ahead and do that. Currently, the president on the left side, he said, well, now all the three main parties, he would be the second of those, it is the Black Party, just talk to each other for a week, and then we'll see, because from what is rumored or what I heard, we have a very novel situation, which is that nobody wants to cooperate with the Blue Party, the Freedom Party. So even though they have the highest amount of votes at about 29%, I'm not directly going to give them the task, but I'm going to play around like this. And also, instead of, as a president, telling the other parties, I'm sorry, these are democratic parties allowed within the constitution, otherwise they would be banned. You better effing do your job and try to get along, no matter what. That would be maybe what the response I would give if I would believe in representative democracy, which I don't necessarily. But he's not saying that. He's playing around, and it's so obvious and strange, almost like in America, where it seems there is a strange conspiracy or whatever. I mean, there it's not so obvious because you only have two parties. But here you have literally all the parties basically playing and being like, yeah, maybe you got the most votes, but, we don't like you. And now they put the qualification to say, maybe you can be part of the government, but the Kickel guy, the main guy you saw, he cannot be part of it, because he already was part of a government in 2019. I explained this in a different Neuropa with the whole Strache thing, and when the Ibiza video exploded. This is well documented in international. Huh?
He's timed out. He's got too far. He's already done it.
No, the thing is, he was interior minister in a ministry where the Black Party, the guy you see on the right, was running it for 30 years and doing God knows what. And it's very likely that the Freedom Party Kickel guy maybe started to find some documents or whatever. And I guess they didn't like that. So they made sure to first explode the government. And now making sure that this guy never gets back in again in any relevant position, which is just, even from a basic analysis point of view, so ultra suspicious. And I'm always surprised how MK Ultra must all these presenters and journalists and mainstream people be, that they follow along with this narrative and no one's ever asking the question, and all they can say is, oh no, it's because he's right-wing, it's because he's not a normal politician. Again, somewhat reminiscent of Trump, not really comparing them, but in terms of pattern, it's just super suspicious. And at the same time makes me wonder if whoever is doing this stage show, they literally want everybody to vote for either Trump or, in this case, the Freedom Party, because everyone else is so obviously in cahoots on such a retarded level with no logic or proper reason. It's astounding. So that was my rant about Austrian politics. We can skip ahead 2 seconds and I briefly go through the other party leaders, and then you know what's up, so stop. This guy recently took over the Socialist Party. He's failing miserably, in short. This is a short explanation. And also he, again, the same story. They made a popular vote, and then somehow the vote was changed, or there were also, they made a mistake, supposedly. They made a mistake in the Excel sheet, which they had, and had flipped the columns or something like this. That's a real official story they gave you. And that's why this guy then, or another guy, got a first place or something like this. But then they made another vote then, where only the party leaders were voting, I think, or the delegates, and then kind of this guy won, who is like, the people who don't like him say is like a crazy Marxist something, it reminds you of Harris or whatever. And he was famous because he was the mayor of Dreiskirchen, where they had the most famous and maybe biggest immigrant center, let's say.
Right, yeah.
And so it's all kind of curious and hilarious and also strange, because he also doesn't seem to be the most eloquent when you just look at him talk and so on.
Yeah,
so
he's
it's
got
really
Vance vibes. He's like JD Vance looking, yeah.
Yeah, it's like
looks
really
strange. He
strange.
looks like he's like wants to have sex with the couch. Am I wrong? Like he doesn't like that suit at all. He like wants to be in a pair of shorts at a barbecue, smelling like charcoal.
Yeah. Anyhow, strange figurines. Then you put up the next guy. Maybe there's only one or two
Too
more
specific?
left.
Okay. Well, look at him stand. Okay. Oh no.
Oh yeah, she's great.
She looks kind of
So
cool.
So she's amazing. She's also
she looks
been
like she'd be
to.
fun to hang out with. I don't know what it is about.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. She's, I think, one of the few ones documented to have been, I believe, at the Bilderberg meeting. I think once I even brought up a short video where you can see her coming from the airport, and she's just like, "Oh, it's great fun" or something. She is of the so-called Neos party, which is actually like a spin-off from the traditional Black Party, which I showed the guy you saw earlier, the supposedly economy party, and they're like the hip economy party. They're super pro-NATO. They're kind of hilarious. And they also, just like all the others, made the worst statement about anyone who maybe was not so interested in the mandates during that time. So super like neoliberal, I guess you would call them, faction.
Why is that my type?
Yeah.
I just don't understand what's wrong with me. I really need help. Help me. Okay. Sorry. Is there more about her, though, or is that it? What's her name?
I mean,
do you know her name?
Yeah, her name is very fun. Her name is Beate Meinl-Reisinger. And in a Trump way, it has now become more and more acceptable, even in Austria, to use like fun names for political opponents you don't like.
They call her Beetlejuice?
She's being called, instead of Beate Meinl-Reisinger, some people call her Beate Heisel-Reiniger, which is especially funny for an Austrian, because Heisel is like a fun term or whatever for toilet, and Reiniger means cleaning agent. So she's literally being called toilet cleaning agent. I find is quite hilarious.
I like Beetlejuice. I feel like you could just call her that and then it'd be okay, because she's like, I don't know. All right, and then this where's
guy,
my boy? He went so fast.
Wait, how could you tell?
It moves so quickly. It's crazy. Like these Austrians, it's because you guys drink too much coffee. You need to chill out as a people.
That's the quick cut which those two guys on the bottom made, which are the commentaries on this.
Right, exactly.
So here you have why did you come about with the idea of alcoholic?
What? Me? What? When did I say alcoholic? I said coffee.
Okay. All right. Anyhow, that's what he's rumored to enjoy sometimes. And he was the head of the Green Party. He basically made them rise like a phoenix from the ashes, along with the whole Thunberg story.
He does look like
that really had worldwide effects. And that's how the Green Party basically got enough percentages. And they're both from the same party originally. And now the president and the leadership there, he's smiling. The left guy's all happy.
Yeah, because they do hookers. Like, he's so drunk he didn't even wear its tie to the damn event. Like, look at him. He's like still drunk from last night, and he just had a beer as he walked in.
No, not wearing, not being overdressed in this case is because he's a Green Party guy, and traditionally they were like the hippies, so that's the last remnant of being a hippie. But the left-hand guy, you can tell, I mean, he was also an economics professor. He's wearing a tie as a president.
I'm offended as a Croatian because we invented the cravat, and so really anytime I see someone not wearing a tie, I consider it anti-Slavic. So I don't know, we'll have to just move past him.
I'm sorry, Andreas, for not dressing
up. It's all right.
Up.
That's not your fault. You didn't know. Okay, look at this guy. He reminds me of like a honey bear. He looks like he belongs in the Berenstain Bears. You know what I mean? Doesn't he have that kind of like his jaw? Not these guys. Like these guys are adorable too, but move on. Show me his face. Is that it? Was that like the group of people? She's glamorous.
Oh, I mean, she just because we also see her, she's had a great position. She was, I think, involved with Boston Consulting Group or something like this. No, I think that was a different advisor. But the lady you saw just now is like this. She was like the Iron Lady, and what she told everyone during the lockdown, she said, well, now that we have a mandate, or that we will soon have a mandate, it will technically, or even is technically illegal to live in Austria. and not have participated in the vaccination. So that's what she said. So, all very sympathetic people that still run around the political circus. So we have no staff, Andreas. We have no staff. We need some guys from America or something.
I think you mean Berenstein Bears, he says, doesn't he?
Oh yeah.
All right, Berenstein. Okay, so Nachiketa, shout out. Very good to hear from you. I like what you're doing recently. We talked about your show earlier. You made the news. I like how our news is like, my friend does this, my friend does that. So good job,
well,
friend.
If that's the best stuff I can watch,
the best news.
I'm not going to show you some Fox clips,
Well, that's exactly what they're doing, isn't it? Like, they're just showing their friends' news. Like, so I'm going to show my friends' news. Okay, I wanted to do this. Speaking of my friends' news, and Stephanie, great review. Stephanie Scott 424 says, I think this was my favorite Neuropa to date. So shout out to Stephanie. You should definitely follow her art. She's been on the show. Dear Andreas, how do I find more from Martin? This is the only thing I can find of his work. Thanks, man, says the Whizzle. Well, I definitely recommend, if you don't know what we're talking about, to check out the Flag Secret Symbolism Neuropa episode where Martin explains his hypothesis and all of the data on the theory behind the colors of flags and what they mean. Martin is just,
to be clear,
cool guy.
He referenced this presentation from somebody else and expanded upon it, just to give proper credit, which would also be important for him. But he did a great job at explaining it, and it's super, super interesting and definitely something to keep in mind.
Right. I mean, so obviously the whole point of work is to expand on that work and to present that work to
oh my God.
audiences.
Okay, just briefly, and I don't usually do this, but here we go. So everyone, kindly subscribe to Nachiketa's channel if at all you have any interest in whether the earth below your feet is curving or not, or what is going on.
Yeah, dude.
Because he already had an interview with the originator. I mean, he also has interviews with David Ewing Jr., but on his lives, he already had an interview with Will Duffy, who is the originator of the final experiment of this whole Antarctica thing. He did even more amazing research. I referenced some in previous Neuropa shows. And here, right after our show, I guess, if you're interested in understanding what's going on, you can hear it right. This is the common expression from the horse's mouth, or right from the originator of this experiment, what he says this is for or not. And Nachiketa definitely is one of the most qualified individuals to talk to him and about it. I wonder how should you call it? How many sets of gloves he's going to wear when talking to him. I assume he will be diplomatic as always, even though...
It's going to be like Logan Paul and Mike Tyson. You're going to want to see this one. They're going to be punching each other. It's going to be a thriller and the Manila and the gorilla. All right. Anyway, so definitely check out Nachiketa's channel in 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 18 minutes, whatever. 18 is a holy number. So the point is, we were trying to answer this question because someone said, where can we get more work from Martin? And the cool thing about Martin is you can get tons of work from Martin. You just have to speak German because he's been on like TV and stuff. You know what I mean? Like he's kind of a guy. Yeah. What's up, Nachiketa? We love you. We'll definitely go to your show. We're all watching his show. That's not a question. You're all coming.
Yeah. So this is great. And also just for people that really want to know more about Martin, I have, even you can please go to my website or even just search for Martin Hipp anywhere, because I doubt that you wouldn't find him. Maybe you didn't put his last name there. If you go on Index, kindly, on the top.
Just for you.
And then it should say Martin Hipp somewhere. Deutsch, German, and then Martin Hipp.
Yeah. The way you can remember is Martin is super cool and super
and he's hip.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I do it. Yeah, exactly. And he's like, honestly, he's the kind of guy you want to hang out with. So you should definitely follow his work. He does a lot of really deep, serious presentations. You can copy these through Google Images and translate them into English. And it's just really worth it to check out his work. He's a cool guy, you know?
So there's like 4 sets of articles which he wrote.
Yeah.
And also, I believe on the same page on my website, there should be a playlist. If you scroll down, YouTube playlist, there it says on the bottom.
Sweet. Very cool.
And if you press on that, then you should have all the presentations that we did together.
All the Martin Hipp episodes we've ever done in a place. That's amazing. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so I'm going to save that somehow. Copy this. I love that you made this. Okay, anybody else who wants that
computer
playlist?
safe.
Dude, I'm going to put this into like the chat here. This is the link. I'll maybe make like a short link for it in the description. But that's awesome that there's a list of what, 12 or so episodes. That's like, you could call that almost a year's worth of content if you think about it realistically.
Also, of course, including the translation we did for German of your documentary. Anyone who hasn't seen it, you have to check out History Revised.
Even if you don't speak German, just listen to it. It sounds good. It's Raph just being super just like...
Well, and you have it on your channel, obviously. So what else do we have? We're almost done. And we got the health section. That'll be a quick one.
Yeah, let's get to the health. Wait, did we do John Stevens, though? Did you want to talk about John Stevens?
Oh, yeah, no, I just wanted to mention him because I haven't researched this so deeply. He apparently was the guy who invented this whole modern process of processing grains.
I was going to say, he's a big old boy because he comes from that wheat belt. Look at that wheat belt he's got around his belt right now. Like, that's crazy. All right, okay, moving on.
And basically explaining how a grain is processed. And that's why, again, I brought up the second and third link. We have had Michael on the show, who's talking about starvation of consciousness and how removing certain parts from flour can be problematic. And this is also, as I like to repeat, why so many people have gluten issues and so on. It's not only because of the type of seed or grain they're eating, which can, of course, be relevant. It's also because of how it's processed. And it may well be that even if you believe you have whatever allergy and so on, this is, of course, not medical advice or anything like that. But in his example, I'll just use his anecdote. He was diagnosed with that and then researched this for a long time and realized, oh, well, if I actually use naturally processed grains, which is not heated, nothing is removed, it's like a stone mill, old world, I want to say, type process, then I actually have a completely different nutrient density in what I'm eating and in the bread. Right. And it will be that my body then is not as negatively reactive to it at all. Just because, again, so many people think I have allergy, this and this and this and this. There is one thing to say about German New Medicine. You can look up like short introductions on German New Medicine, even in English now on YouTube. That's one part. And the other part is simply, if you'd simply eat too highly processed things, naturally your body will reject it or develop issues with it. Whereas a quote unquote normal load of quote unquote natural gluten or whatever most likely would not harm most anybody.
I mean, basically, if your bread doesn't look like this, like, stop.
Right.
That's kind of the deal.
Yes.
That's all it comes down to. Your bread needs to look like that.
But even here, it may be that the flour was heat processed and so on. So if you can really get some that is really stone milled and not even heat processed, then you really get the highest quality flour or bread. And the only drawback is that then it only lasts for maybe 6 or 9 months, the flour itself. Whereas if it's industrially removed, then it stays good forever. But this really just reminds me of whatever wartime tactics or extreme starvation issues when you would even consider doing something like that. I'm still highly suspicious of why they even came up with this process. Only for longevity of food. I mean, you want to store food for 2 years and then eat 3-year or 10-year-old flour. That's the reason. That seems very suspicious. And also, I do not believe that even if they officially didn't know vitamins back then or whatever, that nobody would come to the idea and consider, well, maybe removing a part of a plant that is a whole plant could maybe not be the best thing, and then heating it up and then doing whatever else. Anyways, not a big fan of highly processed food.
Eat that good bread. All right, and Goldkeim.
Yes, and this is just a reference from Michael, which I always like to pull up, where if you're confused about this whole thing I just explained, this is the most concise version of how to understand it. You can check it out.
We did a great video on this, and you can definitely watch that in Neuropa where we talk about germ bread. But you know what I mean? Just like eat real, full, whole foods. Cool. All right, and then is this the episode actually where we talk about that?
Yes.
Yeah, we did a great video talking about the germ. This is a really interesting talking about the different parts of food and why it's not completely insane that the food pyramid was built around wheat. And so it's just like at one point we think of wheat as something other than it is because we're only used to eating this one fraction of a part of it. And so we're like, oh, that's crazy. It's all gluten. It's like, well, yeah, that's all you have left, you freak. Okay. So
this is part. Maybe you even want to play it for 20 seconds. You won't get copyright struck just because the voice may sound funny.
Okay, you talked me into it.
Oh, sorry. No, if it's more effort, it's not.
We've had a lot of new experiences with Borrelia.
Yes.
If you've maybe heard that conventional medicine immediately involved the mothers.
So I think you can already stop it. I think the voice cloning is pretty impressive.
That was the voice cloning?
Yes, yes.
What?
So this is
That's cool.
this is a presentation translated by a friend where
And then it's really hard to get it out. And
we
we
actually
do,
And
well,
they made him
those
Scottish.
who know me,
yes,
we
yes,
do
what I'm
some
saying.
Because they're like, all right, Austrian's a little weird, so let's make him
No,
Scottish.
it's his Carinthian Austrian, so it's even a stronger dialect, and it's really funny that you say Scottish. I wasn't even sure, but I just heard clearly this is obviously a particular accent, but yeah, you're right. Scottish is a part of it.
Probably a Corinthian
And
Scottish, God only knows.
frequencies. Here's
And
a tip
so-
for me to use both sine and square sources, but it's explained very simply in this app.
Actually, his
And
accent
made
changes.
to
It's all
the
over the place.
study.
This
And
sounds-
now
yeah,
it
it's
gets
not 100%
exciting.
consistent.
This sounds like this is one of those terrifying interactions I've had where you meet somebody, you're like, where the hell are you from? Because you're like from everywhere. Like you're from Canada, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Indonesia, France, like Newfoundland. There's something happened to your accent where it's a little British sometimes, but not all the time. You know what I mean? Sometimes it sounds like you're from the South. It's weird. It's weird.
So please show the video again. You don't have to play it more, but just what I want to show. So number one is a demonstration of voice cloning, which is, I guess, somewhat effective. And
Pretty
the other
good.
thing, we actually had Klaus Semper on together with George. It's called, I actually believe it may be called Healing and Balance. It's one of the Neuropa shows where we talked about frequency technology. And what's interesting here is that Gerd actually made a study where he's applying this particular device that Klaus invented, which we had to show on. And at least according to this dark field microscopy study, it looks like there's quite a few cases with very, very interesting and impressive effects. And it also, this is very interesting, appears as if there may be some sort of quantum entanglement with blood, meaning that, I'll paraphrase it in a concise fashion, hopefully, he's taking these blood samples to make these analyses. And then once he took a blood from a patient, and then he sent the patient home with this device and said, okay, please use it at home, right? And then they were using it at home. He was looking at the blood sample he had taken earlier, this old blood of the patient. And within that particular sample, he could see a particular, in this case, we would quote unquote say positive change concurrent with the supposed treatment this individual gave to themselves at home. So there was, let's say, 100-kilometer difference between the sample and whoever was at home treating themselves. So there seems to be really like a quantum entanglement with blood. I'm not exactly surprised by this, but if we have more evidence for it, I think it is highly relevant also with the whole, ritual, occult, whatever is really behind the blood thing. I think it's relevant to properly document if there is something like quantum entanglement, because this could explain also the added fascination that certain individuals and groups have with blood overall. And aside from that, I think it's just great because it shows this is not just whatever, but it actually appears that, at least in terms of blood structure, there can be positive effects achieved with frequency-based devices which are available right now. Thank you so much.
Shout out to Mythic
Class.
Class. I want to shout out to Middle Class. Also, I feel like Rad Dad last time gave a membership chat, and I didn't shout him out. So shout out to Rad Dad. And then Crypto, you're based. He'll protect me from the bear. You are the bear. What are you even talking about? Don't take that the wrong way. Okay, so that's good. How about this FNAC? The page you showed me won't load, so I don't know what you want from me. It says I was access denied. Access denied. What is this FNAC?
Let's see if I can access it. Are you really telling me that this is VPN locked?
Probably.
Can't be serious.
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Okay, so I'm just bringing this up because I had been talking about different frequency-based devices previously, and some of them are also, or I guess most of them are based, they say, on the works of Tesla. Of course, it's a rabbit hole
I
unto
could
itself.
VPN it, but it's gonna mess up my stream
No,
right now.
No. Don't worry about it.
You'll pull it up on
And
your
the-
page. Just
and
pull
the
up,
other thing,
do a screen presentation. Can you show it?
yes.
Do you want me to
one
send you the link for
second.
it? Do you need me to do it? I can send you the link.
No, I should be fine. I just have to open the right window. 1 second.
And in the meantime,
And we will
everyone,
have
just
it.
remember that these socks are super based, right? Like these are the kind of socks that you want. Actually, there's a really cool place called the Sock Shop in Santa Cruz that you can get socks like this. They're very expensive. I feel like these would be like $60 socks, maybe more, right? I'm a fan of just even $15 socks. I feel like are kind of expensive. Like I like to get like a 10-pack of socks for like $6. €8 at Lidl, let's say. But those are pretty great socks. Okay, La Cabal, FNAC. This is price locked VPN. Why don't they want us to see it? Tell us more about it.
And the only thing I could imagine is because it's in France or like a French-based thing, and maybe they only want Europeans to see it.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
sure.
true. French are super racist against Americans. You know what I mean?
So,
Just kidding.
why I'm bringing this up is so much of this frequency type information and knowledge is, on the one hand, like I said, based on supposedly Tesla, and the other guy that's often brought up is George Lakhovsky, which is this guy right here.
Okay.
And what I just found interesting, I still have to check out the book in more detail, that for some reason the title is La Cabale. I mean, I still have to see what he's referring to exactly, but it sounds like the Cabal. And it says Histoire d'une découverte, so the history of a discovery. I only read secondhand literature about him, but supposedly George Lakhovsky, even in the early 20th century, developed this device similar to the, I guess, how do you call them? Tesla? Not Tesla coils, but these like, you know, like these big frequency type devices. I guess you see one of those here, maybe.
Right.
If we can. Oh, I'm zooming in on the wrong window. Let's see. Or whatever stuff he has. They were quite bulky back then, the frequency-based devices. And supposedly in the early 20th century, he was running around with this and was like, oh, I can help people with potentially, not even sure I'm not allowed to say this. This is historical. He said he maybe can help people with cancer or something like this and other civilization issues. But then the problem he encountered, he was treating some people for like some strange skin lesions and so on, which are quite well documented, even available today.
Right.
But back then the issue he had was not enough people he could find that would have civilization-based illnesses, such as cancer. So that's, I found that was kind of curious, and also, yeah, another point
that
towards
genetic
eating
errors.
whole grain. Come again?
Genetic errors. Like, why do we have all of a sudden these recent epidemic of genetic errors? Right, it's data corruption. It's worth looking into what happens when you don't have all the data that your system is supposed to have. Okay, La Cabal.
Yeah, it may turn you autistic when you don't have all the data.
Yeah. And then you wanted to look at Brian Johnson, who I just finally made contact with, which I'm really excited that I finally was able to reach out. And I hope that I'm able to do a conversation with Brian Johnson at some point soon. I don't see how it works, because the dude is on such a level of, you gotta understand, his whole day is planned in the most anal retentive way possible, which is the whole point, right? Like, every calorie in his diet is like fighting to the death to survive. He gets to eat like one meal a day. He gets up at 5. He goes to bed at 8 p.m. You know, he's a straight up Mormon, but without the Mormonism anymore. He's like it's crazy. I don't know. It's impressive what he's done. You saw the
replacement
picture of him when he was
religion, longevity. So he apparently sold Braintree Venmo.
Yeah. Here's a picture of him
and
when
now
he's
he
fat.
got plenty of money.
This is him eating Hot Pockets and fat, like cheesy corn and like genetically modified wheat gluten and just all the crap. This is him. You know what I mean? And then this is, and he was like, okay, as a Mormon, what you're supposed to do, right, is you pay tithing. So like, let's say God gives you, like $10, you know what I mean? And then God says, I want $1 back. That's the whole vibe. That's their whole vibe. They're thinking, I got to pay tithing back to the universe. So he's thinking, okay, what can I do that can make the world a better place? He's like, in the Bible, because remember, he's a religious guy. In the Bible, people used to live a really long time. So it would be cool if people were more biblical in that way. Let's make the world a place where there's less suffering. That's another biblical idea. Let's make the world a better place where people live a long time. And so to do that, let me experiment on myself. I'll take 10% of the money I made, because it was like $200 million, right? So he's going to take like $20 million, and over the next few decades, you put $10, at least for the next decade, he's going to put $2 million a year into this lifestyle. And the other thing I think is funny about it, that he thinks is funny, and this is one of the reasons I think we connected on this idea, is the Lucifer complex. Because for a Mormon, their belief about Lucifer, there's like, I mean, this is not exactly the whole thing, but for a lot of them, it's like Lucifer had this plan that would be to make everyone be perfect and follow all the rules, and that would make us all, you know, go to heaven. It would be great. And then Jesus is like, I don't like that plan as much. I think we should give everyone free will. But free will is this crazy idea. Like, does free will even exist? And so the Luciferian complex is to build a perfect world where you do exactly what you're told without any choice. And so he's like, whoa, what am I doing by having at 5 o'clock in the morning to get up and to follow this routine that's completely controlled by this group that I'm paying 20 doctors a year, you know, to a full salary to worry about this thing. But it's like his goal was to create a transparent, how to be healthiest lifestyle. And if you look at him again, like this is what he looked like when he was eating them Hot Pockets and falling apart. And then he like started to look more and more Chad. You know, this is actually pretty good. I think this is pretty base. I think he was all right here when he was just living like a healthy lifestyle. And now he's like, okay, I'm going to take my blood every morning. Let me see. Today I just saw his recent thing was his blood platelet. There it was right there. It looks like a picture out of Fight Club. Like he's always so proud of himself for looking like a freak because he's such a nerd. Like you saw those pictures of him. So now he's like, dude, I'm like Patrick Bateman with my like lifestyle. I'm muscular, you know, cause he works out every day. He pushes his body every day and he starves himself essentially because that's the thing that we found to be the most healthy so far. It doesn't mean this is the best thing for you, but selective apoptosis is happening a lot of the time from cannabinoids.
Well, there is something to say
intermittent.
There is something to say about intermittent fasting.
Right.
However, I would not recommend. I mean, anything that detoxes you, yes, but I would not recommend any too drastic changes that stress you out super much because stress itself is definitely not healthy. So,
well, it depends actually. So, certain kinds of stress is healthy.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you, Andreas.
So it turns out. And hopefully I can get David on the show soon. I've been doing my whole thing with the life extension people. Dr. David Sinclair, one of my favorite doctors. He's like 60 or something. I forget. But he looks like 40. He's like lost years, you know, as he's gotten older. And he's doing amazing research. And obviously, stress is something very useful to the body because put into stressful circumstances, you produce hormones and like maternal stress is even a kind of stress that happens, right? So if you can figure out the different corresponding antagonists and agonists for stress, hormones seem to be the reason that we stay younger longer. That's a big part of it as well. So stress is actually very useful in the right circumstances. So long as mitigation of stress happens, right? I think also exercise can have stress to it. And you're like, all right, just 5 more reps or something like that. That's a thing probably to look at. And yeah, fasting does help you when you're sick. That's great. That's basically kind of what I would like to infer without getting in trouble. If I may, YouTube, please. Yeah, check out Dr. David Sinclair's work though on fasting and xenohormesis, adaptive response to physiology of an organism to molecular cues, right? Neither from direct stressors or from nutritive. So this is kind of the goal, is we get to a point where we move past stress and nutrients towards just direct control over the promoter sequences. All right, cool. What did you want to say about AG1 or Brian?
Oh no, I just here said fasted sauna, and then Stefan saying, I don't know if this is correct or not, but definitely even when you're just going vegetarian, make sure that you eat plenty of fats. Like high quality fats is actually super amazing and is important for the system for sure. Yeah, and last thing on the health.
I have a conspiracy theory actually. So, Nico Cotto. Do you guys know who Nico Cotto is, right? So there's this obese Juilliard actor who does mukbang, where he eats a bunch of food, and like the idea that he lost weight or didn't lose weight or gained weight, whatever, the whole deal. If you look at my ads right now, I get ads all the time from companies saying, fly to this country to take your fat and save it and freeze it so that in 20 years you can inject it into your knees as stem cells, right? And so the best kind of fat, I'm just thinking about like avocado fat here. Like, what if there's a goal for some of these? I see some of these, famous actors. You're like, wow, like they got kind of fat for a minute there. But is that part of the goal for them to save enough fat that they can use for their life extension therapy? Who's to say? All right.
Yeah, I'm not commenting on that. Very last thing to point out, just we were talking about him and the health thing, and I think I put up the last link. No? Yes.
Yeah, blueprint.
So he has this huge thing, and maybe just do one thing and enter cocoa or cacao, however you would spell it properly, in the search bar, which I don't even see where it is.
Right.
Oh yeah, here, right. Just click on it. So I just want to point out to everyone, and maybe you can ask him about this. I'm a little bit confused because as far as I understand, actually, we just spoke about fat. The fat in cacao is super highly valuable, super amazing, and it's definitely what you want to eat. And dare I say, you may actually get for a similar price if you get a good deal, even a whole kilogram.
Well,
and then why I'm saying it depends for sure. But then what you get is you have the fat and all the fat-soluble vitamins and minerals and whatever else is in there, and it just tastes again completely differently. So anyone who has only ever eaten cacao powder and never really the raw cacao mass, it's a different ball game. Highly recommended.
He's got a couple videos on this. So one of them, and so I'm a big obviously I'm a big fatty diet person, but he's living a whole different lifestyle based on his doctor's routines, which I don't completely understand what his plan is exactly, but it's essentially to keep his body in less than 2,000 calories a day. It's like 1950 to 1750 calories a day from this particular meal that has, broccoli, like highly nutritious minerals, and broccoli breaks down all of the micro minerals and metals so that he can digest them, like the calcium and etc., right? Like the iron, etc. And then he's also eating like a small amount of fat from olive oil, which is his main fat source, right? Yeah, shilajit. I just got some shilajit resin recently too, which I think is cool. Like certain people should do this if they wanted to. Like,
if anybody got a good source, which is not prohibitively expensive, I'm still searching because when they tried, they need to have a conflict. I'm gonna have a
little bit of garlic there, Raf. Excuse me. Well, I don't want to interrupt anything. While
check
I have
out the link below.
Oh, good.
So anyhow, anyone who knows about this, let me know, because when the whole conflict started, they literally closed down all the Amazon shops from Russia, where I had the nicest lady giving amazing prices on shilajit. And I was trying to tell all my friends, and I gave some away. There was maybe 1 or 2 friends that by themselves were like, yeah, I'm buying this and that. And now it's like 3 or 4 years later, and suddenly random other friends are approaching me. Yeah, haven't you talked about this shilajit? Where can I buy it now? And I'm like, well, now the shop is closed. I'm very sorry. You can pay 20 times the amount now in a regular store. And back then nobody cared. So, that's the problem you have when you're living in the future. But Andreas, I don't need to tell you or our viewers about that. Thank you so much for today.
I would push though. So one of the points that's interesting is a lot of the time you can't be sure, even from organic sources with cacao nibs, if there's, so the video he does first, he talks about how chocolates have heavy metals in them. So that's a major reason why it's important to get very carefully alkalized chocolate. Before we even look into fats, a lot of this stuff has crazy amounts of heavy metals in it. But
you mean processed chocolate or?
Yeah. Just specifically talking first about processed chocolate. Most of the ones that people are like, oh, this one's super ethical. Well, it has mercury, arsenic, cadmium, lead, like all these things. And it has far less of the flavanols that you actually get. There's a benefit from the flavanols and far more of the heavy metals than you would expect.
Though just briefly, also here, it's very important to exactly define what these heavy metals are and what form they are in.
True.
Because too often, I'm just saying, because too often this is all taken with a broad brush, just like with water. It also depends on the type and formation of minerals you have in water, whether they are bioavailable and good for you or whether they are potentially harmful. So I'm just pointing that out. Please go on.
Well, I was agreeing with you also that cacao tends to be a healthier source, but cacao also can have heavy metals in it because of the way things are processed in Peru. And also just the way I think cacao is grown now, like they put a lot more chemicals into the soil than they used to, and the rainforest didn't used to have any chemicals in it. It was just extracting, right? And especially now, people don't grow cacao in the rainforest. They actually have in Africa and in the Caribbean and all these places new farms that are growing cacao. So cacao is not what it used to be, I guess is like a way to put it. But yeah, I don't know. Just be careful. Be careful with your sources for things like that. And there are definitely still heavy metals like cadmium. And arsenic is a major problem too. I think arsenic is one of the ones that you have to be particularly careful about. And yeah, so just I think also the point is his restrictive diet is to have less than the amount of calories he fully needs. So instead of having like, you should have like 2,000 calories a day, a lot of the time is what they say. He's doing like slightly less than he fully digests in a day in order to, burn off,
Yeah, basically to have like a constant low level apoptosis, no? Basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like there's a reason why he's doing it. I think it's working because like, again, look at how he looks.
Oh, sure, but
compared to what he
again,
did.
I mean, basic diet changes according to your preference
Sure.
and
Well, did you see
possibilities.
this
And
guy's
intermittent, no,
video?
just let me finish the sentence. And intermittent fasting itself can probably take you, and high quality water and not too much crazy stress can probably take you 80% of the way as well, without need for ultra expensive and ultra strict regimen, would be my
Right.
impression.
And that was kind of the thing. So like I'm, just because I am talking about this doesn't mean I'm saying like rush out and spend like hundreds of dollars on this stuff. There are certain things, and they've seen reviews of it where, and this
No,
is one
but
of
he
the
did
things.
a really good job on upselling the cacao powder, at least if it is correct in the heavy
Well,
metal
just-
delineation, like you
just-
said, then.
Well, calm down a little bit. You calm.
No, it's fine.
Right?
Well done, Andreas.
So there are, if you try to go out and buy some of this stuff, like if you try to get particularly like the Blueprint nutrient and longevity mix, you're not going to find a cheaper source. Like it'll be really difficult for you to do, and other people have done it. That was one of the cool things about this guy's video.
Okay, all right.
And why
So
I
it's like
recommend you watch Marius Fountain's review of the product. Because he spent like a few $100 on the thing. And he's like, look, if you just spent the 45 or whatever and you just got the longevity mix, that's probably the biggest benefit to you because you can get your vegetables at your local store. Like if you do it 1 month, you kind of get the plan of what is in, and so he actually did an index chart here where he finds like you can find locally in Austria and Germany cheaper and of course in California too, I'm sure you can do this. You can find pretty much cheaper sources of olive oil, right? You can find cheaper sources of a lot of these vegetables. And so mainly he says like the best thing to get was like the nutrition longevity pack, and the rest of the stuff, like, yeah, just find your own sources. But he has on this page, why I bring it up is the European guide here. So his custom blueprint is right here. So he actually created an alternative where you can spend, I think, like $25 instead of like $100 or something like that. And he has like a list of all the sources to get the same stuff essentially in Europe, right? And basically, it's the open source version of it. But the reason he can do that is because Blueprint is open source. So the benefit of him making
that would have been my next question, so that's great. Then I'm all for it.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Is he's a guinea pig lab rat himself and his son, because he has several kids who are still in the cult, as he calls it. But his son's kind of like part of his cult, right? Like, so that's how it's working out, And he's experimenting on himself publicly while giving the information out to everybody. You can see exactly what drugs he's putting in his hair. And you can see exactly because he was like going bald and he's like dyeing his hair, right? Like he figured out some way to, instead of dyeing his hair, actually revitalize the follicles and things like that. These are just random cosmetic things to some extent that are being repaired, but it's interesting to see the repair. And one of the main interesting things is he's got 100% perfect sleep for the past 9 months, which is probably the reason I'm so fascinated. The capacity to have perfect sleep is just, no one's doing that. And we have watches you know, on people sleeping all over the world. No one's getting 100% perfect REM every night without any, like, this is the only person who's ever achieved it. I know you're laughing, but it's like, really, it's incredible. It's like,
No, I was just going to ask about the metric and you explained it, so thank you. Yeah.
I mean, the most important thing to health is to be able to know if you have perfect sleep, because if you don't have perfect sleep, you're going to have extreme telomere damage, like, eventually. And that's not the only thing. There's a lot of other things too. But if you have perfect sleep, you also don't oversleep. You get a lot more out of your day. There's certain functions that happen to your liver when you're asleep. So yeah, I don't know. Excited. I'm excited to see the future. I'm excited what he's working on. Do you need to buy the cocoa powder? Probably not if you like to get true cacao, like we were saying. And if you're interested, check out, like I said, Marius's particularly European review. I thought this was really good. I've seen several reviews from the United States.
That's cool.
As well, but Europeans just seem to have their act together a little bit. So like I said, like, you can get a list of every ingredient, what it is, find the cheapest source of it. And hey, if you think it's more logical for you to spend 6 hours, you know, finding every source or something like that. Actually, I mean, you know, like, I think the point of this is that he's made it into like a single meal. So that's kind of the vibe, is like, you can get through a single meal and you can kind of follow his lifestyle
like
plan.
Soylent Green. No.
It is kind of green, but like, again, it's you can make it yourself. It's broccoli. You get broccoli, garlic, ginger, and cauliflower. He boils it, and then he adds quinoa, hemp seeds, and a ounce, like a little shot glass of olive oil. And they either blend it up or they eat it normally. And so this is not wild stuff to you and me. If you were eating hot lunch, frozen ham and cheese Hot Pockets, drinking Pepsi, this would woo you. This would be a religious experience. Okay? All right.
Indeed would be, yes. I agree. Well, thank you.
All right, cool. Physical health is also like, he works out like 6 hours a day. Stop pretending it's about your diet, everybody. Exercise. But yeah, check out his Blood Boy thing. So he said, look, no Blood Boy anymore, because now he's got you know, actually the capacity to produce his own platelets. So super based. Okay. Was that like the last subject? Did we do it? Was that it?
Indeed.
Amazing. I feel bad because I feel like Nachiketa wanted us to like end the stream like 15 minutes ago, and I was ranting.
That's okay.
About
Everyone can go over there now.
Transhumanism and immortals. Okay. Well, I love you all. I wanted to say that Jennifer Connelly. You don't need anything because you have Jennifer Connelly. Yes.
You don't need anything. You have Jennifer Connelly.
Thank you for being here, Raf. You make my day.
You don't need anything. You have Jennifer Connelly. Riding through the night on a
I'll see you guys later. We have 8 p.m. You know how it is.
Put a quarter in the slot machine. Let us set you free.
Haha, peekaboo.
Gin comes holy light. She's your only fantasy.
Yeah, and thanks again to Mythic Class. And hey, Auntie Queenie. Good to see you all.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Andreas.